Monster Synthesis Master. Chapter 431 Migration of the Beasts. Very quickly, the impregnable wall on Link's control interface transformed into impregnable sword. Bronze wall iron sword, blue a firm bond formed by the cobalt beetle, silver army ant, and silver array wall ant when moving together. Defense increases by 100% when combined together. It can form a bulletproof iron wall that can resist the energy of grenades and below. The formation wall ant's whistle arrow can be enlarged into a sword, while the cobalt beetle and silver army ant can be condensed into a shield. The physical damage of the enlarged sword is increased by 50%, and the power of the special ability is increased by 50%. This Kazaya. A single fetter had forcefully turned two pieces of equipment with additional special effects for Link. The synthesis was completed, and two new powerful comraders were added. Link went down to the basement. The cobalt beetles were already familiar with the environment and were working hard on their territory. As soon as Link arrived, he saw the cobalt beetles doing bad things in pairs. Although it was a good habit to listen to orders, there were clearly more important things than mating. Whoosh! Link whistled, and the silver formation wall ants in his sleeve formed a whistle arrow. Then, with the thought, the short and sharp whistle arrow instantly multiplied in size, forming a 5-foot-long demonic sword. The cobalt beetles on the ground quickly combined with the silver army ants to form a shield, which then flew into Link's hand. Link observed the shield carefully. 50 cobalt beetles formed the shield's surface while the silver army ants filled the gaps and joined together to form the shield's handle. He knocked on the surface of the shield, which made a crisp sound. It was unusually strong. The demonic sword floated in front of Link. As soon as he raised his hand, the sword formed by the silver ants appeared in his hand. The cold and sharp long sword was as straight as a rope. The sword's jaw was extremely short, revealing a little of it. The body of the sword was 2 fingers wide, and the edges were sharp. One could not tell that it was pieced together by silver formation wall ants at all. Link waved his hand, and the sword screeched in the air. It was terrifying. Then, Link let go of the sword. The sword formed by the silver ants floated in the air. Link stretched out 2 fingers and swung them at will. The long sword drew a flower in the air. He didn't touch it, but it felt like he was controlling it. Link's eyes brightened. He seemed to have found a new use for it. Under the effect of commandeering, the whistle arrow had become a flying sword. The flying swords circled around Link like protective divine weapons. It gave the martial arts and mechanics department's prosperous wasteland planet a bit of Xiangxia color. It's a pity that there's no way to expand the body of this flying sword. If it could be expanded to about 10 centimeters, perhaps I could step on it and fly on it. Link snapped his fingers, and the flying swords around him immediately shrank into whistle arrows, which flew into his sleeve. The cobalt beetles that formed the shield and the silver army ants were also separated. The iron sword bond made Link feel for the first time that creatures with metal affinity were so interesting. If it wasn't for the fact that King Kong is about to evolve to the epic stage, I would have formed a fetter with King Kong today. Link was slightly disappointed. He wanted to see King Kong's appearance after he joined the Steel Fetters. Ever since King Kong made a trip to the quagmire of death today, killed the aberration, and recited the incantation to ferry the souls of the dead, it had accumulated a lot of merit according to it. Its heartstrings had been pulled by Buddha and it had gained some enlightenment, so it hid in the divine tree Noxie and went into seclusion. King Kong was a dark blue-grade pet. If he could come out of his training this time, Link would probably have another epic pet. The reason why he did not add Vajra to the coupling interface was all because of this coupling rule. Once the creature's quality increased, the previous comradeship would enter a locked state. Only by sacrificing materials of the corresponding quality could the comradeship be reactivated. If he were to add Vajra to the comradeship now, he would have to spend a blue material. After King Kong came out of his seclusion, Link would have to give him another set of purple materials if he wanted to evolve to the epic stage. It would be better to wait until after he came out of seclusion to synthesize it, and he could save a portion of blue materials. Before, Link had thought that the feathers were just adding flowers to the composite brocade. But after the two trampling today, this was more than adding flowers to a brocade, it was simply a change of play. Alright, you guys can continue. Link waved his hand, and the cobalt beetles returned to their territory to continue their unfinished business. The Silver Army Ant also returned to the Silver Tree Ant Queen's nest. The two comradeship combinations he'd made that day had inspired Link greatly. Some creatures might not be eye-catching and weren't very strong, but once they were formed into the right comradeship, they could be extremely effective. It seemed that when he synthesized creatures in the future, in addition to their functions, he should also consider their connectivity. For example, who would have thought that a cobalt beetle used for mineral exploration would be the most powerful shield after forming a fetter and could also amplify magic? Not to mention the dicolor algae, which grew 10 times faster after forming a bond. With the cooperation of the illusion vine and sunflowers, it would only take a few days to clean up the death quagmire. Link walked out of the secret chamber. However, as soon as he stepped out, he saw the macaw speaking with a trumpet. You must search carefully and carefully. Don't miss any suspicious blind spots. That disgusting thing had disappeared from Howl Castle. It was probably thinking of some evil plan in a dark corner. Maybe they'll do something to Link while he's asleep at night, or they'll target any one of us. The macaw was sitting on a yellow van that had been modified from a baby carriage. The one pulling the van was its loyal little brother, the curly-haired baboon. Behind the macaw were the so-called 5 mice and 8 great guardian deities. Needless to say, the 5 special agent mice each had their own strengths. At this moment, they were wearing helmets and searching the corridor one by one. They didn't even let go of the knight armor art pieces that stood in the corridor. The 8 guardian deities were the Hellhound, the Skeleton Wolf, Xiao Ziobai, Little Poison, the curly-haired baboon, the rubber python, the water arrow turtle, and the multicolor butterfly. They were guarding the macaw. Link was stunned. This macaw was even more ostentatious than him. Everyone, be sure to search every corner carefully. Link is very afraid of these things, and I'm sure you don't want to see him being scared by the low-level aberrations at night, right? The macaw sat in the small yellow van and spoke with confidence. Link had been walking in the opposite direction, but he was stunned when he heard this. There was something wrong with this macaw. It was clearly the one who was afraid of the aberration, but it still wanted to pour dirty water on him. The thought of exposing her flashed through Link's mind, but he gave up. Sigh, Ying Luo can't help it. She raised her own macaw, so she can only bear with it. Link could already imagine how fragile the macaw would be. If he dared to reveal the truth in front of the 5 mice and the 8 great guardian deities today, the macaw would dare to drink another 15 bottles of genetic mutation potions to drown its sorrows tomorrow. Don't let yourself suffer a huge loss of property just because of a moment of verbal pleasure. This was a valuable lesson that Link had learned from the macaw. Link wanted to retreat into the shadows and let the macaw and himself go. However, he had only taken 2 steps when his phone suddenly rang. The sound echoed throughout the entire second-floor corridor. Old Celestial the parrot and his fans all turned around and saw Link, who had just come up from the basement. The macaw stopped fanning itself when it saw Link. Its heart skipped a beat. Link must have heard everything I said, right? This guy is definitely going to expose me. The macaw felt a chill down its spine and broke out in a cold sweat. The lofty image that he had built in front of the 5 mice and the 8 guardian deities was about to collapse. Bean-sized beads of sweat formed on the macaw's forehead as it was already thinking of an excuse to escape. The macaw's eyes met with Link's, but it immediately dodged, not daring to look Link in the eye. Are you looking for low-level aberrations? Then you'll have to look for it carefully. It's very scary if it's hidden in the dark. I won't disturb you guys any longer, I'll be leaving first. Link said as he waved his phone, indicating that he had to answer the call. Hearing this, the macaw's tense body relaxed. Looking at Link's back, it felt a lump in its throat and tears welled up in its eyes. Link wasn't angry at all when she insulted him like that. He even protected her face in front of the other pets and chose to bear the consequences. Link quickly walked through the hall and arrived at the garden. He looked at the name Military Intelligence Department Ren Yi on his phone screen and couldn't help but be curious. Why was Ren Yi calling so late at night? And he was even calling his phone. Hello, what's the matter? Ren Yi, who was on the other end of the phone, said carefully, General, the Gobi Oasis plan that you've personally instructed us to carry out has been completed. It covered a total area of 150 square kilometers, and an artificial river about 5 meters deep was dug at the edge. The high-voltage power grid was also fully operational, so it was absolutely impossible for the animals in the protected area to escape. The Moon Shadow Council has also built 3 oases in the Gobi, and the greenery in the Gobi has been completed. I've called your office phone before, but no one answered because you said before that once the plan was successful, I would inform you as soon as possible, so I rashly called your phone, Ying Luo. Link clenched his fists in excitement. Deputy Director Ren, you don't have to be so formal. This can be done on time. In addition to the cooperation between the Inhumans and the Moon Shadow Council, you have also contributed a lot in leading the Military Intelligence Department to issue missions and coordinate them. I will definitely give you a high praise during the army meeting at the end of the year. Ren Yi's face was red, and he was extremely excited. He stood up and saluted in the empty office. For the general, for Shandu, we will die even if it means 10,000 deaths. All right, it's been hard on you. You should go back and rest. All right, I won't disturb your rest, General, Ren Yi said. After he hung up, a few notifications appeared on Link's system interface. You have completed the main city quest Shuta Gobi Oasis. You have received 200000 experience points and activated the excellent event Abnormal Behavior of Wild Beasts. After receiving the 200000 experience points, Lin K's experience pool had reached 6 million. He had finally met the requirement of sacrificing 6000000 experience points to the Knowledge Altar. American Samoa stated in his class mission Wealth and Knowledge. The erudite scholar was waving at Link. Link came to the garden on the other side of the castle. He was already under the protection of the god tree Noxie. Link placed his hand on the railing and closed his eyes. He communicated with the Divine Tree and sent his orders to the Elder Council on the Divine Tree. Every month, an elder would take over the Council of Elders. Because the power of nature in the Divine Tree Noxie was more abundant, the elders of the Moon Shadow Council were counting on their fingers to calculate when they would be able to take over the council. This month, it just so happened that the 5th elder was in charge of the Divine Tree. After receiving Link's order through the Divine Tree, the 5th elder scrambled up from the futon and called Link. Hello, Elder Lin? You said that the Gobi Oasis has been completed? Then I'll immediately arrange for the druids to go to the bottom of the Weeping Valley and help guide the wild beasts. The 5th elder had the best relationship with Link. He was in charge of communicating with the outside world in the Moon Shadow Council, so his behavior was no different from the citizens of Shandu. He also had the aura of an old man with a business style. Then I'll have to trouble you, 5th elder. The 5th elder chuckled. It's no trouble at all. However, I do have a matter that I would like to trouble Elder Lin with. We're both elders of the Moon Shadow Council. What's the problem between us? Did you encounter any difficulties, 5th elder? The 5th elder found it difficult to speak. After a long time, she finally said, I know it's a bit difficult to say, but it's also quite difficult for you to do it. It's mainly because I have some insights on the Divine Tree this month and I faintly feel that I'm about to break through, so I want to stay for 3 or 5 more days. This matter is indeed quite difficult to handle. The main problem is that the other elders have been counting down the days to come and hold the fort. If they suddenly stay for 3 to 5 days, they will definitely have objections. The 5th elder sighed. I know. It's mainly because I'm going back to the Noah Divine Tree. I don't feel like breaking through at all. As for the other elders, I'll see if you can think of a way to appease them. If possible, can you give me an opening?" Afraid that Link would refuse, the fifth elder quickly said, "I know that this request is a little overboard and I've broken the rules you've set, so I've specially prepared some treasures that I've collected over the years as compensation. I hope Elder Lin can forgive me." Link's eyes brightened at the words treasured collection. He changed the topic. "Fifth elder, don't blame yourself too much. After all, the reason why you're improving your strength is for the Moon Shadow Council. I happen to have some good tea with me, so I'll go over to you later and we'll talk in detail." The fifth elder was overjoyed to hear Link's words and thanked him profusely. After exchanging a few more pleasantries, Link hung up. Standing on the balcony on the top floor of Wind Howl Castle, he saw the druids coming out of the Tree of God in batches. Link then entered Swarm Commander mode. The Wolf King, which had been trapped in the valley, suddenly woke up after receiving the signal from its master. Its eyes flashed with a dark green light and it raised its head to howl at the moon. The rest of the wild wolves heard the call of the Wolf King and all howled in response. For a time, the entire Weeping Valley was filled with long, and loud wolf howls. The 50,000 wild wolves moved in succession, forcing the beasts hiding in the valley to move. The earth trembled, and the beasts howled. A massive migration of wild beasts began. Chapter 432 A Sage's Specialization in Hand. The players who had just finished their work at the construction site and returned to Shenmue City to hand in their quests heard the wolf pack howling the moment they walked out of the military intelligence office. "There's a situation at the Weeping Valley." After this period of training, the players had long understood the characteristics of Sand City. "If there's any big movement, we'll go first." Even if he couldn't get anything out of it, he would at least know some useful information. In the game, information channels could be transformed into benefits and strength. Take the Gunfight Hotel instance dungeon for example. Now that the average level of the players had increased, they knew how to clear it. However, ordinary players could only get an excellent rating at most, and there was no way to get a perfect rating. Meanwhile, the Miracle Guild, Desert Wolf, and Bomb Chicken all knew the perfect evaluation strategy. As for how Lang Feng got the perfect evaluation strategy when he was killed by a headshot, it was naturally Wind-Chasing Wolf and Fried Chicken who told him after they had a discussion. After all, only the three of them had decided to stay. Lang Feng's early death did not mean that he was not qualified to know about this. After all, the game had just started. Wind could see that Lin Ke thought highly of Lang Feng. A hidden strategy for a low-level dungeon in exchange for the help of the Northern Desert Wolf from one of the top 10 guilds in China, as well as a friendship with Lang Feng, wasn't this a great deal? When the other players heard the wolves' moon howl, they also had a stress reaction. They immediately put down what they were doing and began to gather under Weeping Valley. The NPCs who did business in Shenmue City had long since gotten used to the Inhumans' flustered personalities. They began to organize the items in the store as if the Inhumans had never been there. This kind of tacit cooperation could only be seen in Shenmue City. The players swarmed into the Weeping Valley, and saw that almost all the druids of the Moon Shadow Council were out, chanting and releasing the power of nature to calm the wild beasts along the way. And at the periphery of the beast group, there were wild wolves that glared at them like tigers watching their prey. They released a wild and powerful aura, and the beast group did not have any thoughts of resisting. On a slightly higher cliff in the valley, a 3 to 4 meter tall giant wolf caught the players' attention. Its eyes were calm and powerful, like a pool of still water, without any fluctuations, and did not have the ruthlessness of other wolves. This one was the leader of the 100,000 Wasteland Wolves, the Wasteland Wolf King. The players were whispering to each other. It seems that they are preparing to drive all the hundreds of thousands of wild beasts to the Gobi Oasis. Of course. We've spent a few days building such a huge natural project just to let these wild beasts live in it. It looks like this will be Link's back garden from now on. He can't possibly be thinking of taming all the hundreds of thousands of wild beasts here, right? The players only thought about it and shivered. He was the supreme leader of the Shitu, the commander of the 4 armies, and hundreds of thousands of beasts. How could the Machinery Faith and Wasteland Gang stop Link? On the other hand, the legendary NPC, the #1 assassin on Wasteland Planet, John, had only appeared during the mission to infiltrate the Machinery City. His limelight had been stolen by Link, and now, he had disappeared without a trace. It was obvious who the main character was. It's a good thing if we can tame them all. It means that we'll all have the chance to get pets in the future. With such a large number, the price of the pets will definitely drop. The players' eyes were shining with hope. Soon, the sound of the Wasteland Wolf Cavalry came from behind. Many players rode their own wild wolves to Weeping Valley to witness the migration of hundreds of thousands of wild beasts, entering the home that had just been prepared for them. It was a new home made up of rich resources, 3 oases, ravines, and rivers, and a high-voltage power grid. This is too spectacular. Hundreds of thousands of wild beasts were actually suppressed by 50,000 wild wolves. It's really unbelievable. The player with the slightly lazy voice said in disdain, "You have a wasteland wolf of your own. Don't you know how strong it is? Without the wild wolves, you can't even deal with 3 mechanical zealots. With the wild wolf, he could take on a 5-man team by himself. Although these wild beasts look fierce, they have not been strengthened. How can they be the opponent of the wasteland wolves?" The player scratched his head in embarrassment. The migration of hundreds of thousands of beasts took a long time, and many players stood on high ground nearby to watch the whole process. Many players approached the warning line and looked at the druids of the Moon Shadow Council who were leading the pacification, hoping that a sudden riot would happen and that the druids would give them some quests or something. However, the scene that he had imagined did not happen. Everything was in order. In Howling Heights Castle, the macaw was singing and dancing in the garden, celebrating the capture of the primary aberration with the 5 mice and the 8 great diamonds. Meanwhile, Link had already washed up and changed into his pajamas. Sunflower, who was at the head of the bed, also yawned. He put on his sunglasses and fell asleep with his head tilted. 3 different scenes, 3 completely different ambies. The next morning. Why sleep so long when you're alive? You'll naturally sleep long after you die. Ganba, get up and welcome a new day. Live every day as if it's the last day of your life, and live a wonderful life. In a daze, Link reached out and pressed the sunflower's head down. The guy was finally done with his chicken soup for the soul. Link leaned against the bed in a daze for a while before he gradually came back to his senses. He got out of bed, washed up, and walked out of the bedroom. Breakfast was already on the table, and the soy milk in the cup was still steaming. Looking at the hot soy milk, Link couldn't help but laugh. It seems like old Jin had a good night's sleep. After breakfast, Link called for the driver to head to the Uptown Library. In the afternoon, he also made an appointment with a transport plane to the Death Quagmire airdrop. He had to complete the job mission Swifwatch by morning. It just so happened that today was the 1st of December. If he came to the city library, he could still get a few more experience books and get a prize. Link's schedule was just so ingenious and appropriate. Because of Link's sudden visit, the city library had to restart their plan and ask the Inhumans in the library to leave. The players who had been chased out looked as if they had been interrupted in the middle of their task. All of them had resentful expressions on their faces, but they did not dare to say anything. After entering the library, Link did not look for the librarian. Instead, he went straight to the knowledge altar in the corner. As soon as he stood in front of the knowledge altar, Link received a system notification before he could do anything. It has been detected that you have the required experience points. Do you wish to submit the mission Swifwatch? Link did not hesitate to hand over 600,000 experience points. Seeing the 6-digit experience points in his experience pool instantly fall to a pitiful 4-digit number, Link felt as if his body had been hollowed out. However, what followed was a series of system notifications. Congratulations, you have received Sage 1. At the same time, the cold knowledge altar glowed with a golden light, which fell on Link. Congratulations on obtaining the blessing of the knowledge altar. Link opened the system and looked at the introduction of Sage 1. Erudite Specialization 1. You can ignore the requirements to learn any skill book that is not higher than your own level. Restriction requirement, level 60. Chapter 433 The Airdrop of Love. Link carefully read the introduction to Mastery of the Sage 1, and found a key point. There were two very important points in the introduction. The first was the 3-word skill book, the second one was level 60 requirement. Not all skills could be learned at will. Only skill books that had been written into books could be learned without any conditions. The requirement was level 60, which meant that this ability would only be effective in Saint's Descent version 1.0. Wait a minute. Link suddenly discovered a blind spot in his thinking. He had always linked the version and the level cap together. However, in reality, the mastery only stated that it had a level 60 restriction and did not state that it would be effective in version 1.0. If I don't level up at level 59, does that mean I can keep using this talent? Link was overjoyed. He seemed to have found a loophole in the system. However, Link immediately thought of another possibility. Maybe the level 60 requirement is for skill books and not for my Kazaya. If that's the case, then I really can't learn skills that are higher than version 1.0. Link only knew a little about erudite players in his previous life. This was the first time he had seen a more in-depth mission, so he could only explore it step by step. Putting his questions aside, Link continued to check on the blessing of the knowledge altar. Blessing of the knowledge altar, experience gained from all paths is increased by 100% for 180 days. Link's eyes lit up when he saw the status. Double experience gained for half a year. As long as he could make use of this half a year to gain experience points, he might not have to worry about the amount of experience points for the entire 1.0 to 2.0 version. After the sacrifice at the knowledge altar, Link went to find the librarian. When the old man saw Link, he nodded in satisfaction. Looks like you've successfully received the blessing of the knowledge altar. There's nothing else I can teach you, but don't forget that the path of knowledge is like a boat sailing against the current. If you don't advance, you'll fall behind. If you're free, you should come to the library and learn more. Yes, this junior has learned. Lin K looked at the 7,000 plus experience points in his experience pool. He muttered to himself, I'll definitely do it next time. Then, he left the library. After Link left, he took a car back to Windhowl Castle. After completing the Swafowatch job mission, he finally got rid of a worry in his heart. Although spending 6,000,000 experience was painful, as long as he made good use of Sage 1, and Knowledge Altar Blessing, he could quickly get back the experience. Old Jin! Link shouted as he walked into the castle. 2 seconds later, the macaw appeared beside him like a gust of wind. What is it? I'm going to fly to the Death Quagmire in the afternoon and prepare the bicolored algae from yesterday. In addition, prepare a box of illusionary vines and a few sunflowers. The macaw's body trembled imperceptibly, and a trace of fear flashed through its eyes. I don't have to go, do I? You don't have to go. I'll be back after releasing a wave. Link said as he took off his suit jacket and walked back to his office. Oh, by the way, just put it in the garden when you're ready. You don't have to inform me. After hanging his coat and tie on the hanger, Lin K sat in front of his desk. He took out a pen and paper and continued to draft his ideas. Link wrote down a bunch of words and then read them twice. He was very satisfied with his writing. Then, he folded the letter and stuffed it into a waterproof leather envelope, before sealing the edges with wax. Turning the envelope to the front, Link wrote down the last few words to Grace. Signature, Supreme Commander of the Sand Capital, Link. After that, Link took out a tough, transparent plastic bag and sealed the letter. Finally, they were placed into a long anti-corrosion alloy box, completing the triple nesting doll. After all, there were many oozlings and spiders in the death quagmire, and these layers of protection could ensure that the contents of the letter would not be eaten or destroyed by these mutated creatures. With that, all the preparations for the death quagmire were complete. Link put the box aside and called Penny the penguin. "Penny, how's the situation with the Monster Security Company?" "The merger is coming to an end," Penny reported. "Training for the security company's personnel has been going on for the past 2 days. It's not an easy task to change the sales of these people. Now, we just have to wait for the training of the personnel at each position to be completed before Monster Security Company can take over the business. It will take about a week." "That's good. I have a task for you. Arrange for them to practice first. The Gobi Oasis has been completed and hundreds of thousands of wild animals have been settled in. This project will be under the name of Monster Security Company, and you will be in charge of it." The penguin's eyes lit up, and it asked, "What is the main business of this Gobi Oasis?" "You can discuss other business matters with the other management of the Monster Security Company, but the main task for me here is to obtain the combat experience of Inhumans. Inhumans are allowed to bring small amounts of weapons and ammunition into the Gobi Oasis to kill wild animals to increase their combat experience. As for the price and duration, you can calculate it based on the natural reproduction rate of these wild animals. You can decide on the number of applications you accept every day." The penguin, Pony, quickly jotted down Link's requests for the afternoon meeting. The main reasons Link had built the Gobi Oasis were to maintain diversity so that it would be easier for him to choose and synthesize his own species. The second reason was to improve the combat standards of the Sand Capital's players. Although the game had been in open beta for 2 months, many players' combat level was still limited to shooting randomly or applying skills to their faces without saying a word. He had paid attention to the forums. At this stage, the players' levels were not high, and there were only a few players who had reached level 20 and opened their subclasses. Whether it was a pro or a newbie, they were still in an exploration phase. As winter came, the main battlefields would soon change from large-scale battles to regional conflicts. The opportunities for players to train would decrease, and the improvement of their strength would slow down. As the leader of the Sand City, he naturally had to pay attention to this, which was why the Gobi Oasis was created to train his combat ability. He only allowed the players to carry a small number of firearms and bullets, reducing their reliance on firearms and shifting their focus back to their own classes and skills. He had already explained his thoughts to the penguin, so Link didn't have to worry about the rest. He was at ease when Penny was handling things. Adjusting the Gobi Oasis plan to in progress, Link checked the plans for the past week and couldn't help but sigh. The large defense force field, the tokamak reactor, the underground data center, the Desert Oasis project, and the Monster Security Company would all be completed within a week. As the cobalt beetles went out to explore, the location of the mineral vein would be determined soon. The next step would inevitably be a clash with the Machinery Faith and the Wasteland Gang. In Link's plan, he wanted to accumulate power this winter and greatly improve the players' combat standards as well as the various weapon applications of the tokamak reactor. When spring came, it would be the time for him to sweep across the Gale Desert. During lunch, the macaw carefully approached Link's side. The macaw looked around sneakily. After making sure that there were no other pets, it nudged Link with its wing and whispered, "Thank you for yesterday." "Yesterday? What happened yesterday?" Link pretended not to understand. The macaw was anxious and raised its voice, but it immediately lowered it when it realized what was going on. "It's about the Yu's primary aberration yesterday." Link continued eating his delicious pork chop. "It's not a big problem. It's fine as long as you found it." The macaw giggled and patted Link's shoulder. "I owe you a favor for this." "Don't say that you owe me a favor. It just so happens that Monster Security Company may have a trial operation this weekend. Since you're a pet manager, you have to do a good job. You'll have to be busy on both sides. The macaw's eyes lit up. It's my turn to show off my skills so soon. Don't worry, with me as the pet manager, I will never let my brothers suffer. Link thought back to the scene yesterday when the 5 mice had cleared the way and the 8 guardian deities had surrounded them. He knew that the macaw was right. I always believe in this. Well, yesterday wasn't a big deal after all. You are a pet manager, I can't let you embarrass yourself, right? How are you going to carry on with your work in the future? Link patted the macaw's shoulder as he consoled it. Don't worry, I'll talk to Penny over the next few days to discuss the things to take note of. The macaw was full of energy and wanted to devote all its energy to work to repay Link's favor. After this little episode, it was 2:30 in the afternoon. A Black Falcon transport helicopter arrived at Howl Castle on time and landed on the garden lawn. Link watched as the soldiers carried the 3 boxes of items onto the helicopter. Then, they boarded the helicopter together. To the Death Swamp. Link even handed the pilot a piece of paper with the exact coordinates of the drop-off point. The pilot, co-pilot, and the soldiers in the cabin saluted in unison to accept the mission. As the propeller spun faster and faster, the Black Falcon transport helicopter took off and quickly flew north. The players of Shenmue City watched as the helicopter left Howling Heights and asked curiously, "The helicopter has been flying around the castle frequently these past 2 days. I wonder where they're going. If it's related to us, he'll definitely tell us after a while. Let's take care of the immediate matters first. Have you finished your frontline patrol mission today?" "Not yet, do you want to go together?" While he was in the helicopter, Link took some time to browse the forum. 2 months after the open beta, the newbies on the forum had all evolved into experienced players. From the initial shock, it had become an in-depth exploration of rich game content. All sorts of complicated relationships, grudges were unraveled by the players one by one, and many secrets that were not known in the past were also unearthed. The appearance of Inhumans had changed the structure of the planet, affecting every NPC. Let's talk about Shandu. Other than the Gunfight Hotel, the 2 remaining instance dungeons were the Fall of the King of Sand and the Moro's Tower. However, both of them were in the later stages of version 1.0. Although there were people from the Machinery Faith and the Wasteland Gang at the front line of Shandu as experience points, nothing was more efficient than dungeons when it came to improving strength and equipment. However, after the players dug up the plot of the Sand City, they did find something. Some players happened to be doing missions with the Uptown's influential people and discovered that the factories under the influential people were actually engaged in human trafficking. They would trick the labor forces of the towns and villages around Shandu into the city, then forcibly detain them and trade them with human traffickers who came to buy them regularly. After completing the quest, he successfully opened the Hell Factory dungeon, which gave the players in Sand City another good place to level up, obtain materials, and drop equipment. The rest were all kinds of trivial things, some were acting cool, some were bickering. "General, we're almost there." The pilot turned around and said. Link snapped out of his daze and looked at the death quagmire that was emitting grey fog not far away. The pilot took the Black Falcon transport helicopter to the sky above the death quagmire and gradually approached the coordinates given by Link. Link beckoned to the soldier beside him. The soldier trembled and straightened his back in respect. "What are your orders, General?" Lin Ke unlocked the first chest but did not open it. "Come over and help me push this thing down." The soldier quickly got up, walked to the side, and began to push the box. At the same time, Link unlocked the second box. The 2 of them pushed the box down the helicopter at the same time, followed by the third. The 3 boxes were free-falling in the air, and their lids opened abruptly in the air. The green-colored algae scattered like dandelions, and countless illusionary vines swayed with the wind like grass snakes. The only thing different was the sunflowers, who took out sunglasses with their leaf hands and put them on their flat faces. They held hands and shouted, "Not afraid of danger, challenge yourself, overcome your fear, and brave the world." The smell was too strong. As the helicopter continued to move forward, Link took out a metallic box from his pocket. He looked at the plants scattered everywhere under the influence of gravity and wind and threw the metal box down. The iron box rolled in the air and gradually disappeared into the grey fog. "General, we've arrived at the designated location," the pilot reported. Link watched as all the items disappeared into the grey fog. He couldn't help but smile. He whispered, "Banshee, enjoy this great gift. Let's return," he said to the pilot. The two-colored algae was blown away by the strong wind, as thin as a floating duckweed. It was thrown down from a high place, but the ground was covered with half of the death quagmire. Some landed on the dense tree crown, and some landed on the pool through the gaps. The illusionary vine smashed everywhere. After a short period of dizziness, it twisted its body and began to move. Sunflower's chant reverberated in the air above death's quagmire, and only stopped abruptly when it hit the ground with a smacking sound. They were all crooked, either hanging upside down from the trees or face first on the ground. They used their last bit of strength to say, "I can't die yet. I want to bring positive energy to this filthy land." Chapter 434 The Power of Fetters. The discolored algae, illusionary vine, and sunflowers gathered together and activated overflowing green. Exuberant greenness. When the multicolored algae, illusionary vine, and sunflowers appear at the same time, their growth speed is increased by 10 times. Night recovery rate is doubled. Illusionary vine's hallucinatory and poisonous effects are doubled. Although it was currently daytime, the death quagmire was shrouded in grey fog and thick treetops all day long. The visibility was extremely low, and there was very little light. In the three plants' perception, it was no different from night. Sunflower was the largest, so he suffered the most injuries from the fall. However, after the coupling overflowing green took effect, the roots of the sunflowers that were hanging on the trees and on the ground could not help but take root in the soil and began to absorb the nutrients from the ground to recover their bodies, even though their faces and mouths had not regained their senses. The mud under the grey fog was particularly moist. Other than not being exposed to sunlight, it was very suitable for the growth of plants. When the two-colored algae arrived in the grey fog, it was like a fish in water. It seemed to be completely activated and grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. At the same time, these two-colored algae all turned green and began to greedily absorb the grey mist in the air, turning it into oxygen. The illusionary vine also began to grow at a speed visible to the naked eye. Its torso gradually elongated, and after growing to a certain extent, it broke free from the middle and broke into two, then continued to grow. The overflowing green bond provided the three plant-type creatures with a growth rate of 10 times. Just as the dusk-color algae and the illusionary vine were frantically reproducing, the muddled sunflower gradually regained consciousness and slowly got up from the ground. Its face was pulled out of the soft soil, and the mark it left behind gradually disappeared. The sunflower twisted its round face and pulled out its roots from the soil at once. It then covered its throat with both hands and coughed, spewing a cloud of dark green smoke. "This soil is poisonous. But, I've been unconscious for 3 minutes. Even a donkey from the production team wouldn't dare to rest like this. Quick, help me up. I'm going to spread positive energy." As it coughed, a few sunflower seeds jumped out of its mouth and fell into the soil. They immediately broke out of their shells and turned into a tender sprout with 2 petals. Hearing the call, the illusionary vine twisted its vines to the location of the sunflower, and then carried it on its body. Along the way, it absorbed a lot of the two-colored algae and began to move away. Along the way, the sunflowers shot out seeds from their mouths into the mud swamp, while the dual-colored algae that were hitch-hilling along the way found the right time and got off the bus little by little, then found the right place to start reproducing. The illusionary vine was also pulling as it walked, leaving behind many parts of its body. These parts could quickly become mature vines with a growth rate of 10 times. The plants that were slow to grow were now growing at 10 times their original speed, and they were quickly occupying the foggy swamp. Then, something even stranger happened. In the grey fog where visibility was extremely low, slogans such as "When will the grey fog clear if you don't breathe in it? It's everyone's responsibility to purify the air, free sunflowers, breathe every day" and so on were gradually echoing. Even the giant radioactive spider on the tree was frightened by the spreading slogan and shrank into the crown of the tree, not daring to come down. On this day, the giant radioactive spider, which had been at ease for a long time, finally experienced the fear of being dominated by a hard-working man. At the same time, in the Red Land, a silver metal box clattered against heartless metal and fell to the ground. After yesterday's incident, the Lord of the Grey Fog, the Harpy, was already on high alert. Hearing the sound of helicopter propellers above the grey fog, she was already on high alert. The Harpies had no way of sensing plants like the dusk-color algae, the illusionary vine, and the sunflowers, but the metal plate that fell from the sky caused quite a stir when it passed through the grey fog, which was clearly captured by the Lord of Grey Fog. The metal board fell to the ground, and after about 10 minutes, a pair of slender legs dotted with feathers slowly landed on the ground. The bird's claws were curved with hooks, looking sharp and terrifying. Once caught, the flesh would be torn apart, and the bones would be crushed. At the top of the wings, one could still see human hands that had not completely degenerated, but they all had sharp and long purple nails. Picking up the metal plate from the ground, the harpy flapped her wings and disappeared into the grey fog, leaving the Red Land. After a while, the harpy returned to her cave. After decades of tidying up, the cave that had collapsed due to the nuclear explosion had been repaired. In addition to the living space, there was a huge long table with various agents, instruments, and solutions on it. There were also some radiation-infected beasts and animals in the cages in the cave, as well as bodies that had been treated with embalming. There were 3 to 5 heartless servants, either carrying plates to carry things or cleaning. The harpy opened the metal plate and immediately saw Link's personal letter through the transparent seal. The harpy wasn't the least bit surprised by the "to Grace" written on the envelope. Her alchemy's notes had fallen into the hands of the other party, so he had naturally read the contents and was clear about her encounter. However, when she saw the words "Supreme Leader of the Sand City, Link" at the end of the letter, the harpy's blue and slender brows furrowed. Since when did Sand City have a supreme leader? There were 2 superpowers on Wasteland Planet. One was the Federation of Farnight, and the other was the Fank religion. The nuclear war 42 years ago was also caused by the war between the 2 countries. Sand City was only a city under the Federation of the Dharma Knight, and it was known as the Pearl of the Desert. Only the president of the Supreme Council of the Dharma Knight Federation had the right to use the word Supreme Leader. Could it be that after the nuclear war, the outside world has changed? The Federation of the Dharma Knight has been divided. The harpy tore open the envelope and took out the letter that Link had written. To Grace. By the time you read this letter, I should have already returned to Shandu. I've already read your alchemy notes. Your spirit of not giving up any hope of survival in the face of hardship and desperation is worthy of admiration. The secret base in the crater where the Dragonhawk Security Division 2 was located had now been renamed Death Quagmire. When you saw the signature on the envelope, you might have already thought of it. That's right, after the nuclear war, the situation on Wasteland Planet changed like never before. The Fia Union fell apart, and the Fank Religion Kingdom fell apart. The 3 special cities, Shandu, Dragon City, and Day, formed the Freedom Federation. The remnants of the Fank religion had scattered all over the planet due to their faith, forming their own religion and organization. You've lived in the Death Swamp for 42 years. Rather than saying that you lived to study alchemy mysteries, it would be better to say that the Death Swamp has become your cage. The grey fog saved you but also harmed you, making you unable to leave this land of death filled with dead souls. By the way, I forgot to tell you that we rescued a person from the underground base yesterday. Troy, who turned into pure data stream of consciousness due to an accident in the laboratory during the nuclear explosion, belongs to the Special Research Department. He's a special researcher who specializes in biological and electrical engineering. Perhaps you don't understand the meaning of this letter now, but you'll soon discover the changes in the death quagmire. I look forward to our next meeting. Chapter 435 Total War, December 12.5. Link took the helicopter back to Windhowl Castle. The soldiers on the helicopter saw Link's smile, but they didn't know why. They didn't dare to ask. Link, on the other hand, was extremely satisfied with the gift he had prepared for the Queen. When the front line was almost settled, it would be time to visit the old place and have a showdown with Grace. Link was in a good mood when he returned to the castle. Seeing this, the macaw's eyes curved into crescents. It poked Link with its smiling eyes and said, "You're smiling so happily. Was the matter very successful?" The macaw was also involved in this, so Link didn't hide it. He said bluntly, "It's going very well. After the war on the front line is over, I'll take you on a tour of the old place and see the new quagmire of death." The macaw shivered in fear and shook its head like a rattle. It quickly refused, forget it. I don't want to go to that place a second time. Do you think I don't know what you're thinking? After going there, you'll definitely not only find the harpy, but you'll also go to the underground base a second time, and you might bring back some strange things." Link had a whole new level of respect for the macaw. "I didn't expect you to understand it so thoroughly." The macaw snorted, placed its wings on its waist, and raised its head. "Can't I? I've already caught the low-level aberration," the macaw said. "Have you thought about how to deal with it?" Although it had already been locked up in a cage, the macaw still had a lingering fear when it passed by. As long as this fellow existed, it would not feel at ease. "Let's leave it there for now. Let's see how it lives without a mouth and a nose." Link returned to his office. Soon, he received an email from the Link building. It was from Supervisor Penny. The content was a business plan for the Monster Security Company's Desert Oasis survival exploration. Lin K opened the document and looked at the design discussed by the think tank. He was full of praise. For example, each Inhumans were only allowed to bring one hot weapon and 100 rounds of ammunition, but there were no restrictions on cold weapons. The time to enter the desert oasis was also set. There were 4 options: 3 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours, and 24 hours. The price of each option was different. If players could not return according to the scheduled time, all the loot in the desert oasis would be invalid. This eliminated the possibility of players escaping solo after entering. Moreover, they had also set up a disciplinary mechanism. If a small team came, the entire team would have their points deducted. If he entered alone, his credit system in the Sand Capital would be affected after his points were deducted. The Lin family financial group's various businesses in the Sand Capital, as well as Shenmue City and the Military Intelligence Department, all had the right to refuse entry. The strict credit system put an end to the players' sneaky ways and situations of taking advantage of others. The price to pay for playing tricks on this was definitely higher than the profit. As for the price, 3 hours was 3,000, 6 hours was 5,000, 12 hours was 10,000, and 24 hours was 15,000. Link immediately saw the psychological and game theory behind the price. As expected of a dark blue-grade pet, its ideal was to build a money empire. It was just that the knowledge contained in this price was enough to be studied. The first was 3,000 wasteland coins for 3 hours. There was nothing much to say about this. It was to set a benchmark and also to let the players have a clear understanding of the value of time in the Gobi Oasis. 1,000 wasteland coins per hour. The next 6 hours cost 5,000 wasteland coins. There were 3 more hours, but the price was only 2,000 more. It gave the players the feeling that buying it was a profit. Hence, if players were given 3 hours and 6 hours at the same time, they would definitely be more inclined to stay for 6 hours. Even if they couldn't last for 6 hours, 5 hours was still worth it. The second one was 10,000 for 12 hours. This one was different from the previous ones. The average price was the same as 6 hours, so it didn't show its advantage. However, compared to 24 hours, the price was doubled, but it was only 50% higher. In comparison, it was very affordable. Even if he couldn't stay for 24 hours, he could still earn back his money by staying for 16 or 17 hours. By placing these 4 prices, it was already a round of subtle questioning to the players, allowing them to make their own judgment of value and thus affect the result of their brain's choice. Although the 6-hour and 24-hour projects were worth it, most people wouldn't spend all this time on their watches. Leaving early was the source of extra profit. There was also a table and a sector diagram in the report. After some analysis and calculation by the actuary, the 4 options could produce an additional 20% or more of profits. The professional things were left to the professional people, and the business-related things were left to the penguin penny. After reading it, Link immediately wrote down his reply, approved. There wasn't much time left for Shandu. Since the appearance of the wolf cavalry, the machinery faith and the wasteland gang's activities in the desert had decreased a lot. This was not good news for Link. The machinery faith and the wasteland gang were gathering their strength, planning to do something big before the new year. After approving the business plan that Penny spent the night working on, the promotion of the Gobi Oasis would be handed over to Penny and the media department. What Link had to do now was wait for the players to hand him the money so that he could complete more tasks to make up for the deficit. After finishing his work, Link even surfed the internet for a while to check on the recent hot topics in the Sand City and the Freedom Federation. Nothing major had happened in Sandu, and the recent events were all related to players. The conflict between the players and the uptown dignitaries. The large number of players had taken away the job opportunities of the natives. News of the wolf cavalry entering the city, causing many people to be shocked. As for the Freedom Federation, they had also published several inspiring articles in the past 2 days. Dragon City was fully prepared to defend against the beast tide after the new year, and Faye's attention was always on the dark forest in the east. Under such circumstances, the new general of the Sand Capital had taken office, and they still had to go to war with the machinery faith and the wasteland gang. The people of the Sand Capital sat still and did not panic. On the contrary, all kinds of rumors were flying around about Dragon City and Fayette, making it seem as if the Freedom Federation was going to disintegrate the next day. After reading the message, Link closed the web page. The situation on the wasteland planet was in a stalemate, and the Freedom Federation was facing many problems. It seems like I'll be the one to break out of this situation. Link mumbled. He only had to wait until next year to conquer the Gale Desert, and the Sand City would reincorporate the desert into its territory. The ruins, towns, and underground resources in the desert would bring various economic benefits to the Sand City. On the Freedom Federation's level, once the Sand City had resolved their worries, they would have time to help Dragon City and Fayette solve their problems. At that time, the entire situation on the entire wasteland planet would welcome a huge change. Link stood up and walked to the balcony to enjoy the fresh air. As far as the eye could see, there was an oasis enclosure dozens of kilometers away with hundreds of thousands of animals living in it. There were oases and flowing water, gobi deserts, hills, and man-made stones. There were all kinds of terrains. If the Aboriginals in Shandu were to build it, it would take at least 3 to 5 years to build a man-made landscape of this scale. However, with the resources of hundreds of thousands of players in his hands, the players fought day and night. In less than a week, the Grey Desert had changed. These wild beasts would become the players' experience points, helping them to improve their strength and play the role they should have. In the process of hunting, the players would go through a man-made process of survival of the fittest. The stronger and more agile animals would be selected and synthesized by Link's creator to become a powerful member of Link's beast army. Link was standing on the balcony when he suddenly heard a squeaking sound from the garden below. Looking closely, there were no pets or animals on the lawn. Squeak! The voice sounded again. Link followed the sound and finally saw a cobalt beetle with a silver metallic luster on its back at the entrance of the cave. The cobalt beetles that were previously deployed for exploration had returned. Link jumped down from the second-floor balcony and caught the cobalt beetle in his hand. At the same time, the cobalt beetle also pushed an irregular round ball with a metallic luster that was completely different from the color of the ground around it. The way these insects communicated was different. However, Link now had the insect commander talent. His mind immediately turned dark, and in the darkness, there were stars. Each bright spot represented a synthetic creature. Where Link was, the stars were as bright as the Milky Way. Countless pets were shining with their own light. In the darkness, there were dozens of weak lights scattered around, forming a large spot of light. Link furrowed his brows and looked down into the cave. He didn't see any other cobalt beetles. He then picked up the metal ball and checked it. The system showed that it was cobalt metal. Link's eyes brightened. He finally understood why only one cobalt beetle had returned. Looking at the shining cobalt in his hand, Link's eyes flickered. He activated the power boots on his feet and jumped back to the second-floor balcony. He rushed to the study room and fumbled with the map of Shadow on the wall, trying to find the locations of the bright spots. Link's perception range was 14.5 kilometers. With this range as the boundary, Link began to look for a position in the same direction and angle on the map. The pen in his hand slowly moved and finally stopped. This is the place. Link put up a red flag at the coordinates. If one looked at the map of the front line of the Sand Capital, they would find that Link had planted the flag between Shenmue City and the Korea Grand Canal. The distance between them was almost the same. This place had a special mark on the map. It was located to the west of the Gale Desert. It was a red stone mountain that was half exposed and formed by many red spikes. Because its appearance was similar to the spine of a mythical creature, the giant dragon, it had a domineering name: Red Dragon Ridge. The Red Dragon Dagger was desolate and uninhabited. Because of the sharp stones, it formed a huge valley, and the inside was like a maze. Many animals mistakenly entered and were unable to walk out, turning into a pile of white bones after a few months. Only one kind of animal could regard the Scarlet Dragon Dole as its home, and that was the vulture. Vultures built their nests on the mountain ridge and went out to hunt for food. They also fed on small animals that entered the valley by mistake. The sharp curved stone body and the sharp eyes of the vulture crouching on the tip of the stone were the epitome of the Scarlet Dragon Dagger. Link played with the cobalt ball in his hand and stared at the map in deep thought. Memories of the past flooded his mind. The Red Dragon Dormitory was not famous for its cobalt ore. In version 2.0 Type 1 Contact, the alien demonic race had opened 4-dimensional portals to conquer Wasteland. Demonic soldiers had continuously appeared on Wasteland through the dimensional portals and built camps. The Red Ridge Mountain happened to be the location of one of the teleportation camps, Demon Forging Camp Divine Punishment. It seemed that the cold weapons in the hands of the demon soldiers at that time, which emitted green radiation, were made from the rich cobalt and iron minerals under the Red Ridge Mountains. Due to the demons' invasion, the 3 novice planets faced the same threat. The First Order's observer in the Fandi system discovered this situation and sent reinforcements. That was how the players got involved in the storyline of the Cosmic Ray, and the theme of version 2.0 Type 1 Contact was deducted. Interesting. Link's lips curled up. If the location was here, he had more plans in his mind. This cobalt ore would not only be used to deal with the Machinery Faith and the Wasteland Gang, but he would also include the alien demonic tribe in his plans. Link sat down and called the Military Intelligence Department. Ren Yi, the Deputy Director of the Office of the Military Intelligence Department, was sleeping soundly with his legs on the table and a hat on his face. The phone suddenly rang. Ren Yi was so scared that he shivered and his hat fell to the ground. Ren Yi saw the exclusive phone number in his daze and suddenly woke up from his drowsiness. "General, this is the Military Intelligence Office. What instructions do you have?" A large amount of cobalt ore has been found underground at Red Dragon Ridge at Gale Desert coordinates, 232,093,723. Cobalt ore would be an important resource for new energy in Shadow and would play an extremely important role in the war. I now order you to draw up a task and arrange for the Inhumans to go to Red Dragon Ridge to build fortifications and underground reinforcement measures to ensure the safe and orderly excavation of the cobalt ore. After Ren Yi heard the news, his head suddenly buzzed. Red Dragon daggers, cobalt ores, new energy, a few important words flashed through his mind. He realized that the turning point of this war might be coming soon. Ren Yi immediately opened the map on the computer and locked the coordinates of the Scarlet Dragon dagger. West of the Gale Desert, between the Weeping Valley and the Goria Grand Canal. Gyulu. Ren Yi swallowed his saliva. General, this location is between the Crying Valley and the Goria Grand Canal. It is also within the enemy's sphere of influence. If we send Inhumans to build fortifications, it will definitely attract the attention of the enemy's patrol and we will be attacked. That's right. That's why this mission is very difficult. You know what to do, right? Although Link didn't make his position clear, Ren Yi understood that this was a death order. He straightened his back, his eyes bright and full of energy, and said with confidence, I'm determined to complete the mission. After hanging up the phone, Ren Yi looked at the red dragon dagger that looked like the skeleton of a giant dragon. This place would become the only focus of the battle between the two sides. The all-out war with the Machinery Faith and the Wasteland Gang was about to begin. P.S. I'm making up for yesterday's chapter. I have to go out during the day to do something. The chapter will probably be in the middle of the night. I'll be able to update it again on Monday. Chapter 436 Elite Event Strange Movement of the Beasts. After Lin Ke issued the mission, a new system notification appeared. You have triggered the main city mission Shadowred Dragon Camp. Mission hint: the Scarlet Dragon Dagger is rich in mineral resources and is a strategic location to recover the desert. Take the Scarlet Dragon Dagger and take the initiative in this war. Mission reward: 300000 experience points, 2 random skill books. Link silently accepted the mission. Ever since he had become the leader of the faction, similar main city missions had come in an endless stream, and the rewards were also unusually generous. It was no wonder that many well-known players in his previous life had later become representatives of forces. Just these quests alone could earn them a lot of money, much better than those players who looked for quests everywhere to do. Under Link's careful training, the average strength of the players in the Sand City had already surpassed that of the players in his previous life. Both the number of missions and equipment had greatly increased. If the players in Dragon City and Fae were refugees, then the players in Shadow were obviously Link's sons. All kinds of large-scale projects came one after another, which was a feast for their eyes. Just as the sales of the Wild Wolf mount was in full swing, the Monster Security Company's Desert Oasis hunting plan was launched on an ordinary afternoon. The advertisements on TV, radio, and various publicity panels were all over the place. The viral slogan "Come to the Gobi Oasis, give your body and mind a vacation" swept through the entire Shandu. In the trailer, 1 second ago, the trailer was still harmonious and natural. In the next second, it turned into a man with long golden hair, bulging muscles, and an unparalleled domineering aura. His upper body was naked, and his muscles were covered with scars. He was like a mad lion, fighting with a group of ferocious beasts with his bare hands. The punches and punches, coupled with the powerful background music, made people feel as if their blood was boiling. In a close combat with a wild beast, you can feel the unity of heart, body, and skill, and find your true self. At the end of the scene, a circle of wild beasts fell to the ground, wailing in pain. Only the golden-haired middle-aged man stood on the desert yellow soil, looking down on all the heroes. If you have the guts, then come and challenge me. I'll be waiting for you here. Crazy Lion's magnetic and deep voice, coupled with the domineering promotional video, made the people who watched it immediately have an impulse. It was as if only by going to the Gobi Oasis and fighting with the beasts could they prove that they were a real man of iron and blood. To the players, after seeing the promotional video, they had a completely different view. Isn't this just a time-limited kill to gain experience? It's a good place to spend money to kill monsters and increase the level of your combat ability. I've seen it last time. The wild beasts in the Gobi Oasis are not low level, so the experience points must be high too. If the price is right, I should be able to get a lot of experience points by going there. As the players' levels increased, levels were no longer the only major experience consumption. Many of the class's deep-level skills also required the level of the prerequisite skills. The leveling up of skills also consumed a lot of experience, making the players unable to make ends meet. Now that the Gobi Oasis was open, they had another convenient and quick place to gain experience. At this moment, in the forum, other than the players who were discussing the Gobi Oasis, there were also some players who were discussing the golden-haired man in the promotional video. Who's this Golden Fur Lion King version 2.0 NPC? Why don't I have any impression of him? I feel that this man is a little cool. He should be from the martial arts department. From the performance alone, I feel that he's even stronger than Old Turtle. I have a feeling that if I get an excellent performance in the Gobi Oasis, I might be able to trigger this person's hidden mission. You don't even know this person? No way, no way, no way! He was one of the 4 heavenly kings under Moros, the heavenly king of the north, Mad Lion. He was a pugilist berserker. After that, he joined Link and became a valiant general in the Lin financial group. The poster above is right. To the players who know it, we usually call it the Golden Fur Lion King. After finding out about Berserk Lion's true identity and class, more and more analysis of monsters appeared in the post, further confirming the theory that there was a hidden quest. As a member of the think tank, the bandit leader was fully involved in the announcement of the Gobi Oasis. According to the Penguin, Pony, he wanted to let the people of the Bandit Liang have more exposure to publicity work. Not only did they have to promote Shandu and Lin's financial group on Wasteland Planet, but they also had to do more publicity on Blue Planet, where their original bodies were located, to attract more Inhumans to Shandu. Therefore, after the promotional video was released, the first thing the players did was to go to the forum to check the players' reactions and feedback. In the end, he saw the players' various imaginative analyses. Some conjectures were completely different, but some conjectures were right. As for why Mad Lion was the one who took part in the recording, it was because everyone else had their own work to do. Old Turtle was too sleazy and wasn't photogenic, and the 4 Renaissance players didn't have the aura of a blockbuster. In the end, only Mad Lion was left from the pugilist department. His wild image matched the style of the promotional film. However, it wasn't like the players didn't guess anything. At least, after Mad Lion took part in the shooting, Supervisor Penny did give him an extra task. He did not know the exact details, but he knew that if he fulfilled a certain requirement in the Gobi Oasis, he would be able to obtain a special quest from the Berserker. Dao Yang Ren was prepared to tell this news to Zui Feng. After all, this guy had been studying pugilist in every game he played for 10 years. If he could become a Berserker as his subclass, his personal strength would definitely reach a higher level. As for the bandit himself, he had already set his eyes on Star Constellation's astrologer because of his work. When he reached level 20 and the secondary profession was released, he immediately went to Star Constellation to learn. The thief Liang took out his phone and sent a text message to wind-chasing PRO, asking him to meet at Sunset Cocktail Restaurant in the Uptown. Not long after, Zui Feng called Dua Liang Ren's phone and said, "The Gobi Oasis has opened. I'm counting the members of Miracle to go there. It's really good of you to call me for coffee at this time. So you know that the Gobi Oasis is open to the public? Don't you know that I'm here to announce it?" Win's eyes brightened. As a guild leader, he was sensitive enough to realize that there was a hidden meaning in the bandit leader's words. "Do you know any inside information?" That will depend on whether the coffee you're treating is fragrant or not. After hanging up the phone, Zui Feng immediately ordered Dog King, later, you take the brothers to the Gobi Oasis. I have to go to the city. Guildmaster, you're going back to the city at this time? King Gozheng asked in surprise. The players all knew that every time Lin Ke released a new event, it was an opportunity. The Divine Tree Noxie, the Divine Wood City, and the Wild Wolves were all the same. Although the players on the forum had their differences in opinions regarding the opening of the Gobi Oasis, no one was willing to miss this opportunity. Every time a wind blew, many people would be successful. Wind chasing Wolf and Thief Liang Ren during the closed beta, and bombarding Chicken and Lang Feng after the open beta. This time, everyone wanted to be a pig in the wind, so they were naturally eager to sign up. Compared to the high-standard Wild Wolves, the Gobi Oasis was obviously more friendly to the people. The average level of the players was around level 15 or 16, so they could afford 3,000 wasteland coins. The threshold was low, so everyone wanted to give it a try. Perhaps they might be lucky enough to encounter a hidden mission. Even if he couldn't, it wasn't a loss to spend money to buy experience and upgrade his basic skills. You guys go first. Take a look at the situation and tabulate the information. The one that flies the fastest now is not necessarily the one that flies the furthest. Wind-chasing Wolf said these wise words and then drove his silver sports car from the garage, rushing to Shadu. Just as the players were spreading the news of the desert oasis and gathering at the entrance of the Weeping Valley, Link stood on the balcony and saw the ocean of players in the distance. Link did not interfere with Monster Security's plan to take over the Gobi Oasis. After a night of discussion, modification, and cooperation with the think tank, Director Penny and the think tank had come up with a new operation plan that could deal with most situations. At the same time, the first batch of thugs in the slums of Shadu changed from their loose and lazy clothes to black suits, sunglasses, and walkie-talkies. They entered the ticket hall of the Gobi Oasis under the Crying Valley and began a new professional life. Link's focus was now on the elite event Wild Beast's Strange Movement that would be activated after the completion of the main city mission Shadu Gobi Oasis. If he could get a good rating for a excellent event, he would gain a lot. The Wild Beast's Strange Movement event was activated, but the whole event was like a messy ball of fur. He couldn't make sense of it, nor could he find the end. Although Link couldn't predict the future, he had a weapon of the law of causality in his hands. He dialed the phone in his hand, and the call was connected with a series of beeps. "Boss, what's up?" Fu sounded very excited. If boss called him, he must have arranged an important task. Compared to being the manager of the Colosseum, Fu still preferred the days by boss side, which were full of novelty and excitement. "I have a mission here that requires you," Link said slowly. Hearing the words "no one else but you," Fu was so excited that the fat on his body trembled. What did he mean by "no one else but you"? It meant that only you could do this, and no one else could. This meant that boss thought highly of him. "Boss, tell me. I'm fearless. I'm capable of all tasks," Fu said confidently. Link nodded in satisfaction. Young people should have this kind of drive. "Oh, it's nothing much. You're in charge of the animal arena, aren't you? As the manager of the animal arena, now that the Gobi Oasis is open, as the leader, how can you not go and take a look, see which pets have a bright future and bring them into the animal arena?" Fu's eyes lit up as he slapped his thigh and cheered. "Don't worry, boss, I'll prepare to accompany you to explore the Gobi Oasis." "Oh, I'll be busy these few days, so I won't be going, but I'll find you a reliable partner. You two can go together." Fu's face revealed some disappointment, but when he heard that there was a reliable partner, the images of Li Zijun, Xingziu, Netherworld, Ailun, and the others flashed across his mind. "I'm determined to complete the mission." After Fu hung up the phone, he handed over his work to his deputy, Fred, and then rushed to Windhowl Castle. After Link hung up, he shouted towards the balcony, "Old Jin, there's a mission." As soon as he finished speaking, the door to Link's office swung open. A strong gust of wind blew in, and the macaw appeared in front of Link. "Macaw, reporting for duty." The macaw raised its wings and saluted with its back straightened. It even wore a cotton hat with a cartoon pig's head on its head. There was even a bow tied with a rope around his chin. "The image is here." "Why are you wearing a hat?" Link asked, stunned. The macaw sighed helplessly. "There's no other way. Maybe I used too many camera chickens. When I went to bed at night, I looked in the mirror and found signs of baldness. I'm already middle-aged, so I have to be careful." After saying that, she pulled out a thermos cup from under her armpit, unscrewed the cap, and the fragrance of wolfberry drifted out. "In addition, winter is coming, and the weather is a little cold. If I don't take care of my head, I'm afraid that the grass outside will grow next spring and my head will be bald." The macaw took a sip of hot water. When a bird reaches middle age, it pays attention to health. That makes sense. Since you've already taken care of it, I understand that you're always ready for the mission. That's why I've specially arranged a mission for you." "What kind of mission?" Lin Ke checked the time on his watch. "Fu would be here in about 10 minutes. Follow Fu to the Gobi Oasis to take photos." The macaw's expression changed and it asked curiously, "Link, Fu didn't do anything wrong, did he? Why did you send him to the desert oasis?" "I heard from Penny that it's very dangerous inside. There are hundreds of thousands of wild beasts, and they seem to be getting restless after returning to the natural environment. I'm not saying this, but sometimes you have to allow young people to make mistakes. After that, to protect your own face, just criticize them a little. There's no need to make things so stiff. If you send them directly, will they come out alive?" Link was speechless. "I know there's an opportunity in the desert oasis," he said. "But it's illusory. No one can guarantee it, so I can only send Fu. I'm letting you follow him mainly to record the course of events, and at the same time, to guide him with your experience as a wily old fox." The macaw squinted at Link and said, "So that's how it is. Since it's a matter of taking care of the younger generation, how can I, the macaw, not take action?" The macaw disappeared and returned a moment later with a camera chicken on its head. After a while, Fu ran to the office at Howling Heights with a grin on her face. She wanted to report to her boss and ask him who his friend was. However, when Fu pushed the door open and saw that there was only Link and the macaw in the office, his expression froze. An extremely terrifying thought formed in his mind. Could it be that this time, his boss wanted him to go to the Gobi Oasis with the macaw? Fu thought, "Looks like this is a heavy training." The macaw saw Fu's expression and was instantly enraged. "I haven't even despised him yet, but this guy actually started to despise me. Since you're all here, then let's go, we'll be late." Link looked out from the balcony of the study. Players were starting to enter the Gobi Desert. Chapter 437 The Man Favored by Luck. Link stood on the balcony and watched as Fu and the macaw entered the Gobi Oasis through a special passage. If Fu had entered the Gobi Oasis, he would have discovered and resolved the secret of the strange movements of the wild beasts. Before he left, he had repeatedly instructed the macaw not to interfere with Fu's decision in any way. It was not to interfere with any strange behavior, and it was simply to act as a video recording of a third party. Link watched as they entered the desert oasis. He then left the balcony and headed straight to the basement. The 100 cobalt beetles were divided into two by Link. Some of them were looking for cobalt ores at the front lines, while the others were living in underground nests. After a day, the cobalt beetles in their underground nests must have made some progress. When Link entered the basement and saw the scene in front of him, he sighed helplessly. Many of the cobalt beetles turned over and lay lazily on the soft soil to rest. There were also some cobalt beetles laying eggs at the side. Many small cobalt beetles had already been born, and they were eating on the iron pieces. At a glance, Link saw that there were around 200 cobalt beetles. According to Link's understanding of these metal insects, the newborn cobalt beetles would reach 80% of their age in 2 to 3 days and could start working. Link clapped his hands, and the crisp sound was extremely loud. The cobalt beetles resting on their backs trembled and immediately woke up. Even the donkeys in the production team don't dare to rest like this. Hurry up and get to work. This is the time when we need you the most. When the base amount is enough, you can go to the front line to pile the cobalt balls. The cobalt beetle shook its body with difficulty and turned its head. Its tentacles trembled as it moved to the side of the cobalt beetle next to it. It lay on its body and began to work hard to create. With the rate at which the cobalt beetles were breeding, Link would soon be able to obtain an army of them. When that time came, it would be time for him to excavate the red dragon's cobalt ore on a large scale. Late at night, there was still an endless stream of players lining up to experience the Gobi Oasis. Looking from Wind Howl Castle, there was a glittering golden dragon lying in the desert. Because he had predicted too much flow pressure, Penny used a random number selection mechanism at the beginning of his design. When you get your own number, you can choose how long you want to stay in the desert oasis. You can only enter the desert oasis if you are selected in the subsequent random draw. The main purpose of this was to control the number of people entering the Gobi Oasis to maintain the balance of the entire small-scale ecosystem. However, this setting didn't stop the enthusiastic players. After they got the number, they began to look forward to whether they would be the proud son of heaven favored by fate. On the forum, some players who had entered the Gobi Oasis first had already uploaded the video. There were a lot of wild animals in the Gobi Oasis. However, they were sparse in hundreds of square kilometers of land. Many animals had also tried to escape after entering the new environment. However, after suffering from the high-voltage grid, they had learned that it was an insurmountable difficulty and began to gradually adapt to the new environment. Through the videos uploaded on the forum, many players who had not had the chance to enter the Gobi Oasis took a look at the situation inside. Near the periphery of the high-voltage power grid, the terrain was mostly desert and the edge of the Gobi, where they encountered sand scorpions, lizards, and sand spiders. Because they had a limited amount of ammunition, the players who entered did not use their hot weapons at the beginning. Instead, they used their class and numbers advantage to kill as a group. The bodies of sand scorpions, lizards, and the poison sacs of sand spiders could all be sold for a good price on the market. In particular, these creatures were not small, and their prices were only high. As they went deeper, the Gobi Desert under their feet turned into grasslands, oases, and flowing water, but the creatures they encountered were also more powerful. There were groups of hyenas, wolves, wild pythons, angry hippos, and tigers. Because this team was only testing their skills, they chose a 3-hour content. The entire video was 3.5 hours long. The last half an hour was the summary of the team members after they came out. There was also a little Easter egg at the end of the 5-minute video. The 5-man party had an average level of 18, and they were all equipped with green-grade military weapons of various types. In the end, they completed the 3-hour trip to the Gobi Oasis at the cost of one person. In 3 hours, the 5 of them had gained a total of 58,000 experience points. On average, each of them had gained more than 10,000 experience points. It could be said that they had gained a lot. It must be known that 19800 experience points were required to level up from level 18 to level 19. On the other hand, the 3-hour trip to the Gobi Oasis alone would give half a bar of experience, which was simply too tempting for players. As the first army reached level 20, the players knew that they could choose a sub-class at level 20. The advantage of a class combination would be stronger than a single class, and the players would have more motivation to level up. The last little Easter egg was interesting. When they returned to the city with their spoils of war, a few merchants in the Sand Capital had already heard the news and were waiting there. There were also merchants in the city itself who were purchasing the remains of the wild animals. After some haggling, these spoils of war were finally sold for 7,000 wasteland coins. The ticket cost 15,000 wasteland coins for the 5 people for 3 hours. Not only did they get nearly 60,000 experience, but they also sold the loot for 7,000 wasteland coins, which meant that the cost was only 8,000 wasteland coins. This was a huge profit. This video exploded in the forum. The players who had not been online or had not gotten the tickets were all envious and vomited in the comments section. In the end, the thousands of words were condensed into one sentence: Link's products are definitely of the highest quality. Every time Lin K made a big move, the players would benefit the most. From the start of the open beta, he had been using his actions and strength to guide the players. Now that he had become the most powerful man in Sand City, he still did not forget to guide the players. If this was not a heroic trait, what was? In the past, the players were still confused about who was the main character on Wasteland Planet between Link and John. Now, it seemed that the person must be Link. John was more like a powerful teacher and a friend, guiding and helping Link on his path of growth. Now that Link had ascended to the top and John had retired, everything was based on the players' guesses and explanations. Late at night, just as Link was about to go to bed, a phone call broke the silence of the night. As soon as the call connected, Penny the Penguin reported in a low voice, "Boss, we've dug out the information from Dragon City and Fae. They're going to transport the wild wolf out of the city by freight train in half an hour." Just as the Penguin finished speaking, a few system notifications popped up. "You have completed the main city mission Shandu, Underground Alliance Intelligence Organization. You have received 150000 experience points. You have activated the excellent event Forsaking the Dark for the Light. Boss, the excavation of the intelligence organization is going smoothly, but there was a small accident in the process. We need you to make a decision now." Penny said. "Oh, you can't even make a decision. During the investigation and tracking process, we found that an intelligence personnel from Dragon City had secretly handed a letter to our staff during the purchase process. The content was about surrendering to Shadow. At first, when we received the news and letter, we couldn't be sure if it was a true surrender or a scheme set up by the enemy, so Commander Dai and I didn't tell you immediately. Instead, we investigated the identity and background of this intelligence personnel." The corners of Lin K's lips curled up. He had just received experience points from completing the mission and activated the Forsaking Darkness for Light event. The plot had already started. "Since you're telling me now, you must have confirmed the identity of this intelligence agent and his intentions are true. But you don't know what to do, right? Boss is wise. Indeed, nothing can escape your grasp. There's no need for old Jin's method. Since it's proven to be true, we'll still have to take in this intelligence agent. But if he wanted to join Shandu, he had to show some sincerity. In addition, after the successful recruitment, his main task is still to plant a needle in Dragon City's intelligence agency. If there is any important news, he can report it." The Penguin, Penny, waited for Link to finish before asking, "Boss, now that we've completed the mission and have complete control over Dragon City and Fae's intelligence organization in Chitu, can we start the business group business as usual? For the past few days, Dragon City and Fae's commerce departments have been calling us several times a day, asking us when we will start the sales." From his tone, it seems like he's afraid that the other party will take this business away. Link wanted to laugh at the thought of Dragon City and French Knights commerce officials scratching their ears and cheeks every day, calling each other to test the waters as if they were walking on thin ice. Anyone could tell that Shatu was declining, but neither side thought that the intelligence agency was exposed. They both thought that the other party wanted to monopolize the deal. Whether it was the price or the attitude, they were all very good. The rest is business level matters. You can handle it. Although Link still had the title of the Minister of Economic Affairs of Shandu, most of the business-related work had fallen to Penny the Penguin. However, Penny was happy with this. Only with more power in his hands would his dream of building a money empire come closer and closer. Now that he had an empire, he was only lacking money. After hanging up, Link returned to his bedroom in a good mood. It was good to have more subordinates. If it was an elite event like this in his previous life, he would definitely have to do it himself and run around for a long time before he could get the reward. But now, as long as he moved his lips, someone would help him solve it. When it was done, the spoils would naturally be presented to him. Link slowly fell asleep in the warmth of the fireplace in his bedroom. The next day. Has your blood already frozen? It's a new day. Don't let the cold restrict your steps. Get up and fight. As the blood-boiling sunflower chanted, Link opened his eyes in a daze. When Link woke up, he saw hot milk and sandwiches on the dining table. The only one who could enter the bedroom without a sound was the macaw. If it was delivered on time earlier, it meant that Ah Fu and the macaw had already returned. After breakfast, Link did not call for the macaw. Instead, he went straight to his office. When he opened the office door, he saw an egg on a white porcelain plate with blue patterns on it. Link closed the office door and walked to his seat. He picked up an egg and cracked it at the edge of the plate. Soon, a few cracks appeared on the egg. Link peeled the egg open along the cracks and found a black USB port inside. He plugged it into the computer and started reading the document recorded by the camera chicken. The scene started with Ah Fu's back view. The macaw kept its promise. It didn't even say a word, let alone interrupt Ah Fu's words. The whole process was silent. Link activated double speed. From the moment Fu entered the Gobi, strange things happened. Along the way, Fu didn't encounter any wild animals. Even if he did, he would only see them in the distance. This made the macaw's fat translator talent useless. Originally, it was already difficult for the talkative macaw to not speak and interfere. Now, even the fat translator couldn't do it. Old Jin had completely turned into a moving camera. Ah Fu often turned around and asked the macaw, but the macaw only gave two answers, nodding or shaking its head. However, the boring journey soon welcomed a turn for the better. When Fu was moving, the sound of players firing came from afar. The buffalo drinking water by the river reacted when they heard the gunshot. They began to run across the river like crazy, and the direction they were running in was exactly where Fu was. Ah Fu immediately started running after hearing the sound, while the macaw followed behind and filmed the whole process. Link held his head with one hand and was engrossed in the story on the computer. The whole story was like a TV drama. After panicking to avoid the rampaging wild cows, Fu had unknowingly arrived at the center of an oasis in the Gobi Desert. There were all kinds of small animals living here, such as monkeys, and some small and medium-sized hunters, such as lynx and pythons. The small animals in the center of the oasis had very different characteristics from the large animals outside. If one looked closely, their pupils would have a hint of green, as if they were full of high intelligence. Their eyes were unusually calm, and their actions were also quite calm. There was no sign of wild animals' rage. This strange phenomenon was also recorded by the macaw. It even used a lot of pen and ink to record the animals' facial expressions. This detailed recording allowed Lin Ke to come to the same conclusion through the video. As Fu went deeper, a green light in the oasis forest attracted his attention. Fu quickly found the source of the green light in the forest. It was a green crystal that was emitting the breath of life. It was hanging on the treetop, emitting a quiet and gentle light. It was also because of this light that all the animals in the oasis, even when they saw Fu, maintained great restraint and restrained their wild nature. Fu naturally believed that the crystal was the main focus of this trip, so he plucked the green crystal from the tree without a second thought. In the next second, the creatures in the oasis forest suddenly regained their wild nature and began to chase after Fu and the macaw. The video that followed showed the process of Ah Fu's invisibility and the macaw's escape, as well as the scene of Ah Fu placing the green crystal in the secret room after returning. Then, Ah Fu and the macaw yawned and went to rest. The video ended. After watching the video, Link immediately got up and went to the secret chamber. If he didn't guess wrong, the green crystal that Fu brought back this time was an epic material. Chapter 438 The Strongest Snail. Link entered the secret chamber and immediately saw the glowing green crystal on the table. Before Link even got close, something that he couldn't tell if it was a buff or a debuff appeared on his body. Light of Tranquility, nullifies all critical hits within 50 meters, nullifies all additional buffs, level 60 restriction. Link moved closer. A moment later, the information appeared before his eyes. Sleeping Crystal. Quality, light purple. Description: the green light that can make all living things peaceful may have other uses. After reading the information, Link clenched his fists. Dormant Crystal, there's no mistake. Link's lips curled into a smile. With this, his future plans against Dragon City would be in the bag. When he was watching the video shot by the macaw, Link had a feeling that the green light would calm the wild animals. It had the same effects as the dormant crystal mentioned on the forums in his previous life. When he went to the secret room to check, he confirmed that it was indeed this thing. Previously, it was said that Dragon City was attacked by the beast tide all year round, and hundreds of millions of people had to pay a price to resist the beast tide every year. In the storyline of his previous life, the players followed the guidance of another druid sect, Nature's Alliance, and searched the entire wasteland planet for a sleeping crystal that could restore the berserk beasts to normal. In the end, they found this crystal in an eagle's nest on a dangerous mountain called the Mountain Corridor. In the end, it helped Dragon City resist the beast tide and permanently solved the disaster of the beast tide. However, he did not expect that Fu would find this treasure in the Gobi Oasis in this life because of the butterfly effect. Link picked up the sleeping crystal and studied it carefully. In the center of the crystal was a ball of green elvish energy flowing. The light was uneven, but under the restraint of the crystal, it emitted a stable and gentle light. With the dormant crystal in hand, he would have the space to perform when the Dragon City beast tide came next year. It must be known that because of the years of fighting against the beast tide, many supers and middle-rank people in Dragon City were already full of complaints and had signs of mental fatigue. According to the plot in his previous life, there would be many people who would choose to leave Dragon City after fighting the beast tide. At that time, he would hold the dormant crystal in his hand, raise his arms and shout, and his followers would gather. He would be able to permanently solve the threat to Dragon City, earn a wave of good feelings, and attract a wave of popularity. Link placed the hibernation crystal on the soft cloth and sighed. In his previous life, Fu had easily found the treasure that countless players had been searching for. It could not have been produced in the Gobi, nor could it have been brought there by the druids of the Moon Shadow Council. It could only have been brought over by hundreds of thousands of wild animals, which had appeared in the oasis forest by chance. Fu's luck is really unparalleled. Link wrapped the sleeping crystal in a soft cloth and carefully placed it in a sandalwood treasure box. The sleeping crystal alone was not interesting enough. Link thought about synthesizing the sleeping crystal with living creatures before he went to Dragon City next year to maximize its effects. There were still many obstacles to entering the core of the monster horde with only the light of tranquility within a 50-meter radius. Just as Link stepped out of the secret chamber, he saw the macaw yawning as it walked out of the room in its dinosaur pajamas. The macaw's eyes were still blurry. When it saw Link, it was stunned. "Have you seen the green crystal?" The macaw didn't know the true use of the sleeping crystal. It only saw it emitting green light, so it gave it the name Green Crystal. I've already seen it. You guys did a good job in this mission." Link was not stingy with his compliments. The macaw didn't have time to complain and was hit by another yawn. It waved its hand and said, "In short, this wave of missions was also full of danger. I stayed up late at night before coming back, so I'm going back to sleep. Oh, by the way, Fu is sleeping in the guest room next door." After saying that, the macaw turned around and dragged the tail of the little dinosaur pajamas back to its room to sleep. Link then went to Ah Fu's room. As soon as he entered the room, he saw that Ah Fu had already gotten up and was tidying up. "Boss, I was just about to report to you." When Ah Fu saw Link enter, he quickened his pace and quickly shook his coat to put it on. However, with this shake, something similar to a cobblestone appeared on his clothes and fell to the ground. Link bent down and picked it up. The cobblestone had a concave and convex surface. It was about 5 centimeters in diameter, and there was a circle that kept moving inwards. It was like the golden spiral formed by the Fibonacci number series. It felt like carbonate or chitin to the touch. It was not a colorful cobblestone, but a snail shell. Just as Link was fiddling with it, a milky white body slowly crawled out of the snail shell. It carried the huge house and squirmed in Link's palm. Fu scratched his head and suddenly reacted. "I think I dropped it on my body when I was in the oasis forest." Link's first beast awareness skill didn't have an illustration of this snail, so he didn't know what species it was or what abilities it had. However, this snail was different from the other snails he had seen. It was not as timid as the others. It couldn't escape Link's palm after squirming for a long time, so it stopped. The pair of feelers on its head sniffed around in the air, feeling the unfamiliarity of the new environment. The colorful snail's feelers were aimed at Link. The next second, Link suddenly felt a weak energy impact. At first, he thought it was an illusion, but the system's prompt became solid. "An unknown snail has launched a mental attack on you. You have 145 energy points, so you are immune to this attack." A snail, a spiritual attack? Link's eyes widened as he looked at the snail in his hand. Name, unknown snail. Grade, unknown. Race, mollusk. Level, 1. HP, 50/50ths. Energy, 40/50ths. Skill, spiritual assault, other unknown. Description: this is a snail with thoughts. Because Link's first beast awareness skill did not have an illustration of this creature, he could not see through all of the snail's abilities despite the level difference of more than 50 levels. Initial beast awareness was a specialty that included basic creatures and a small number of mutated creatures that were common on Wasteland Planet. There were thousands of them. Creatures that were not listed in the illustrated book were rare. For a small snail to be able to use an ability like mental attack, it was indeed extraordinary. Link's interest was piqued. "Ah Fu, help me find a box. Put some soil and green plants in it. I have to raise this little thing." Although the energy of this snail was weak, it was a mollusk, and its growth rate was extremely fast. If there were tens of thousands of colorful snails using energy at the same time, the power would be no less than that of a telekinesis super. Fu quickly got to work and found a closed fish tank of more than 30 centimeters in the utility room of the castle. After washing it, he dug up fresh soil and grass in the garden to make a new nest for the snail. Link put the snail into the fish tank. There was a valve above the closed fish tank for sending oxygen so that the oxygen level in the fish tank was constantly monitored. Fu also took into account the snail's food situation and threw in some fresh fruits to ensure that it had enough food. "Boss, where should I put this fish tank?" Link thought for a moment. If he left it in the office, other pets might play with it and accidentally kill it. So he said, "Let's just put it in the secret room." Other than Link, only Fu and the macaw knew the secret room's password and could enter. Compared to others, these two were quite reliable. They knew what could be moved and what could not be moved. "If you're still sleeping, sleep a little longer," Link said as he and Fu came out. Fu, however, insisted on refusing, saying that he had to go back to the animal arena to take a look. After Fu left, Link turned towards the god tree Noe and went to the deep forest where the ancient tree of knowledge was. He was looking for the ancient tree of knowledge to learn advanced creature knowledge. Before this, Link had thought that the initial beast awareness skill was enough. The initial beast could control 80 to 90% of the wild beasts on Wasteland Planet. The remaining elite and commander level creatures could also be made up for through battle or the memories of his previous life. But this time, Fu shook out a small snail with spiritual energy, which changed Link's opinion. These small snails had very low HP and could be killed with one shot. With Link's attack power, he could kill them instantly, so there was no way to know their attributes in detail through the battle. There was no way to detect it, and there was no way to obtain detailed information through battle. In order to understand this creature, Link had to go to the God Tree Noi to find the ancient knowledge tree and complete his beast knowledge. As the Lord of the Tree of God, Link's way of learning was simple. He simply used the ancient tree of knowledge to fill his brain with all the magical creatures that the Moon Shadow Council had mastered. On the specialty interface, basic beast knowledge was replaced by advanced biological knowledge. Advanced biological knowledge: you have mastered the basic information of 98% of the living creatures on Wasteland Planet. You can also communicate with regular beasts. When Link returned to the secret room in the castle with his realm creature knowledge, he finally saw the unknown snail's data. Name: Mutant Snail. Quality: Blue. Race: Mollusk. Level: 1. HP: 50/50ths. Energy: 40/50ths. Skills: Mental Assault, Signal Transmission, Mental Link. Description: Mutated snail after nuclear radiation, greatly enhanced spiritual energy. Lin Ke began his experiment on the mutant snail in the tank. He already knew the effect of mental shock. The mutant snail had been mutated by radiation and produced a high mental power that was different from normal snails. It had also mastered the ability to use its mental power to attack the enemy. The increase in mental power had also changed the way the mutant snails communicated. Although Link had mastered the advanced biological knowledge and could communicate with regular creatures in the beast language, this obviously did not include the mutant snail that was sending out signals. Link took out a signal receiver and quickly detected that the snail's signal was a radio wave signal. Link received the signal, but he couldn't decipher it. If Troy enters the data center now, he can definitely analyze the content of the signal with his powerful algorithms and cryptography. After putting away the receiver, Link took out the spirit crown from his equipment storage. He activated Spirit Magnetic Field Increase to increase his spiritual power and tried to communicate with the mutated snail. Link's psychic power enveloped the mutant snail completely. However, the next second, he realized that he had formed a mental link with the snail. After the mental link, the communication between the two had transcended language. As long as a thought appeared in their minds, the other party would receive it accurately. Even though Link was 100 times bigger than the mutant snail, he did not underestimate it. After a brief exchange, Link finally understood the origins of the mutant snail. It turned out that these snails were a kind of large snails. No one knew when they had been mutated by nuclear radiation, but they had gradually awakened a strong mental power. After decades of natural selection, the snails with strong mental power all survived and mastered the three skills of mental shock, signal transmission, and mental link. From the mutant snail, Lin Ke also found out the effects of the three skills. Mental assault was the release of mental concentration. First, one would use their cute and simple appearance to pass the test, and then immediately release mental assault when the enemy was careless and not paying attention, severely injuring the enemy. The signal transmission was the enhancement ability of the golden spiral of the mutant snail shell. It could send out a mental energy simulated radio wave signal, which could be used to contact other snails nearby and send out a distress call. There was no need to explain the spiritual link. It was a spiritual link that could be established with creatures with high spiritual power, allowing communication that was beyond words and language. The mutant snail seemed to be a small and harmless creature, but in fact, it had evolved into a highly intelligent species due to the radiation. The reason why the mutated snails appeared in the oasis was that they had attached themselves to other beasts and were brought here after a long journey. The entire Gobi oasis is mine, but it's still filled with all kinds of dangers. It's a great obstacle to your clan's life and reproduction. However, my castle garden is perfect for you to live in. At the same time, I can introduce you to some other mollusk creatures, Ching Ching. As Link spoke, he brought over a few blood slugs that had their own living room. They were perfect for the job. When the blood slug and the mutated snail were together, the two sides resumed probing each other with their antennae. After communicating with me, the mutant snail was surprised to find out that blood slugs had the ability to transfuse blood. This was great news for the mutant snail family, and they were basically a blood supply station for everyone. He immediately decided to bring all the mutant snails to join them. Before that, I've decided to modify you a little based on your abilities. Link looked at the mutated snail and then at the purple encrypted frequency signal device on the shelf in the room. There was nothing more suitable than this material for the synthesis of mutated snails. Chapter 439 Red Dragon Dagger. It was a unified encrypted frequency transmitter made of purple material. After Link put down the dungeon crystal, he went to the Moros building and got an excellent rating. If someone had told Link that there were level 1 blue snails on Wasteland Planet before he saw the mutant snail, he would never have believed it. Before that, Link did not believe that he would use the purple material on a level 1 creature. Mutant snail, blue, plus unified encrypted frequency signal device, purple, equals compatibility 150%. Bone synthesis will consume 500 health points. Do you wish to synthesize? Yes/no. Blood cocoon incubation time, 2 hours. Lin K saw that the compatibility was as high as 150% and immediately started the fusion process. With such a high compatibility rate and the fact that it was a blue-grade mutant snail, Lin K could not help but smile. Based on his understanding of the Zerg hive, he would definitely get an epic pet this time. In the past 6 months, Link's only epic pets were the Gargoyle and the Tentacles Dragon God. Now, he was about to bring up his third epic pet, the mutant snail that specialized in function. Even Link himself was looking forward to what kind of surprise it would bring. Without a second word, he chose to synthesize, and the unified encrypted frequency signal in his hand disappeared. The blood cocoon tightly wrapped around the mutant snail and began the complicated and long evolutionary journey. It would take another 2 hours to hatch from the blood cocoon. Link decided to go outside for some fresh air and browse the forum. But immediately after, Link saw his own orders on the Wasteland forum. Big mission of the Mue Military Intelligence Department in Shandu Red Dragon Dole Camp. The post was posted by a player named Suyat. He posted the entire mission content on the forum. Red Dragon Camp. Mission hint: according to the intelligence from Shandu, there are a large number of rare mineral resources hidden under the Red Dragon Ridge. They are extremely important resources for Shandu, the Machinery Faith, and the Wasteland Gang. The Military Intelligence Department has sent you to the Red Dragon Ridge to build a temporary camp to resist all enemy invasion activities and ensure that the camp construction goes on as planned. Mission requirements: choose one of the 2 options, to build or defend the camp. The Military Intelligence Department will reward you based on your choice and performance. Mission reward: 4,000 guaranteed experience points, 2,000 wasteland coins, and other rewards will be calculated based on performance. It was important to note that this quest did not have a difficulty level, but was marked as a battle quest. The word battle sounded like it was of a higher level than the FEDC. Moreover, the mission clearly stated that they would be invaded by the enemy, so this mission would definitely involve fighting with the Machinery Faith and the Wasteland Gang. With the word battle, it was hard not to imagine a large-scale and intense battle. In fact, the Scarlet Dragon Dagger might even be the turning point of the Desert War. With just 2 words, the mission's awesomeness was instantly pulled to the extreme. Due to the Miracle Guild's bad luck, they did not get the entrance ticket to the Gobi Oasis. In a fit of anger, Wind-Chasing Wolf led all his members to attack the Red Dragon Dagger. When the other guilds saw this, they compared the profits from the Battle of Red Dragon and the Desert Oasis and decisively chose to go to the front line. The Gobi Oasis could be farmed at any time, but there were not many opportunities to fight the Wasteland Gang and the Machinery Faith at the front line. With the addition of the words Battle Quest, it made the quest extremely high class, and it was hard not to attract people. A group of players who did not get the chance to draw the desert oasis went to the military intelligence department to accept the mission and then set off for the front line. The players from the big guilds were basically equipped with high-mobility wasteland wolves, which could show their advantage at this time. As it was a major battlefield, there were no special trains or official-sponsored vehicles. If a player wanted to reach the destination, the only way was to use their own legs or their own means of transportation. More than a dozen wolves swarmed out of Shenmue City and lined up in an arrow formation, kicking up a cloud of dust in the desert. When the players of Shenmue City saw such a formation, as well as wind-chasing wolf, who was wearing luxurious equipment, they could not help but sigh. The Miracle Guild was truly full of cards. The Miracle Guild was the first to bear the brunt, and the other guilds were not to be outdone. Soon, Mobei Wolf, Myth, Kalen's Heart, and Sentimental all rushed out of their villa in Shenmue City on their wolves. Traveling Dragon's team was the largest. In addition to the wild wolves, they also drove a truck full of supplies and ammunition and followed behind. It didn't look like they were going to defend, but to find a place in the desert to build a kingdom. The players who chose the construction mission had it harder, as they had to bring the resources and equipment given by the military intelligence department. No military forces participated in this mission under Ren Yi's leadership, and it was completely handed over to the Inhumans in Shandu. This was also his first attempt as the deputy director of the Military Intelligence Division to see if the Inhumans could complete the mission with only the mission requirements. The Scarlet Dragon carriage was 10 kilometers away from Shenmue City. For the players who were trudging on 2 legs, it would take 2 hours to arrive at full load with supplies, equipment, and weapons. However, for players who had wasteland wolves as mounts, it only took them less than 10 minutes to reach the quest destination. The giant brown rock that looked like a dragon's rib pierced into the sky with a curved arc. The stone forest had layers upon layers of sharp spikes, and it was daunting to look at from a distance. Vultures' nests could be seen on the rows of stone spikes that were dozens of meters high. The stone spikes on both sides crossed each other like spears on the battlefield, forming a dark and strange path. The sound of the wind inside rubbed against the stone walls, letting out a long and shrill cry of anger like that of a fierce ghost. Wind-chasing wolf raised his hand to stop the guild members and looked around. The terrain here was flat, and 3 sides were surrounded by black stone spikes. Only the side facing the Gale Desert had its middle gate wide open. Behind him was a strange and dark road. According to the book he had read when he accepted the mission, it was a maze-like road. If he did not have any navigation equipment, he would probably lose his way once he entered. Soon, the desert wolf led by Lang Feng also arrived at the Scarlet Dragon carriage. While sighing, Lang Feng rode the desert wolf to Wind-chasing Wolf's side. "What do you think about the camp here?" Wind asked. As a real-life Special Forces soldier, Lang Feng had a professional understanding of where to deploy his troops. The interior was a rugged and gloomy path, and the inside was still a maze-like road. Lang Feng pondered for a moment and said, "The front is a wide expanse of flat land, and it's connected to the Gale Desert. There's no danger to defend. However, there are many rugged paths inside, and it's difficult for large equipment and resources to pass through. The maze is also complicated, so it's not suitable for setting up camp. For now, we can only set up a camp here, and then build fortifications to intercept the enemy. If I remember correctly, the position of the Red Dragon daggers is right in the middle of Shandu and the Machinery Faith. Therefore, if the enemy sends troops, they will most likely send the mobility troops, which are armed jeeps." Lang Feng looked at the front of the Gale Desert. There were huge brown stone spikes of the Red Dragon dagger on both sides, but there was still an unobstructed entrance about a kilometer in length. He pointed and said, "Over there. If we dig an isolation groove and block the road, the armed jeeps won't be able to come in." Zui Feng's eyes brightened. Lang Feng's analysis made him suddenly understand. He couldn't help but sigh. As expected, professional matters should be left to the professionals. The players from Miracle Guild and Desert Wolf started to take action. The guilds that arrived later were all old acquaintances. When they heard that it was Lang Feng's arrangement, they didn't have any complaints or opinions. They all started to move. Everyone had come to the Scarlet Dragon dormitory to get the reward. If they failed the mission because of their guidance, their efforts and time would be wasted. No one could afford to take the blame. Since Lang Feng was a professional, everyone gave him face and followed his orders. The first few guild players were divided into two groups according to the mission. Those in charge of building the camp started to build wooden stakes and set up tents, clearing the gravel and obstacles. The players guarding the camp let some of them out to patrol the surroundings and stand guard. The rest rolled up their sleeves and dug trenches and made roadblocks under the sun. Lang Feng was leaning against a rock, holding the military sniper rifle Evil Wolf in his arms. He had a green foxtail in his mouth as he watched the construction. Next to him were the guild leaders and people in charge of the guilds. The 1 kilometer entrance in front must be completely sealed. We'll leave a door about 10 meters wide on the side as a way in and out. However, they had to set up firing points here. They had to arrange for 2 high points on the left and right. If the conditions allowed, they could build 2 watchtowers to increase the firepower. I think we can just make a spiral ladder or a straight ladder with chiseled stone spikes, and it's best to make a row. Because if there's no way to attack from the front, the enemy's attack will definitely be concentrated on the side. We also have to make arrangements for the rugged path behind us when there are more people. We'll send people in to explore the route. If the enemy's numbers are too high or they have some heavy weapons, causing the front to fall, we have to enter from the small path and engage in a tug-of-war and alley battle with the enemy. We have to build a few suggested firing points in advance. Lang Feng spoke with fervor and assurance. Wind Chaser, Panamera, Lost Mon, Yaoling, Tangju, and Bomb Chicken, as well as the guild leaders' officers, were all listening attentively. Besides them, there was also Gozhung King, who was in charge of recording, and Suyat, who was the first player to receive the mission. This was because the players in front of him could only represent Miracle, Dragon Travels the World, Myth, Callan's Heart, Desert Wolf, and Friendship. However, the players who were here to complete the quest would definitely not listen to the commands of these guilds. Hence, the various guilds had to make a public appeal on the forums and post Lang Feng's original plan and arrangements on the forums, so that the players who had completed the quest later on could cooperate and work together to complete the quest and obtain the reward. After Lang Feng finished speaking, Dog King made an OK gesture. Alright, I'll upload this video to the forum and ask everyone to follow the plan. I hope it works. I'll also post a call as an individual player, Suya also said. Just as everything was proceeding smoothly and orderly, Tangju couldn't help but ask, do you think this battle mission will be bigger than the last time the Desert Coalition attacked Weeping Valley? Last time, the Desert Allied Army had sent out high-mobility armed jeeps to harass and test Weeping Valley. However, they had been defeated by Link's advance deployment and lost more than a dozen armed jeeps. The mission this time had clearly stated that the Scarlet Dragon Dagger was an important strategic and resource location. A large-scale operation here would definitely attract the attention of the enemy, and both sides would definitely start a series of battles around the Scarlet Dragon Dagger. Panamela didn't say a word, her ears perked up as she listened to the opinions of the other presidents. He hadn't been there during the last war and had only learned a little about the plot from the other guild members. Now, he naturally listened carefully and dug for useful information. It's hard to say this time. We'll have to see how rich the mineral resources here are and whether it's worth the machinery Faith's coveting. Wind-chasing Wolf grinned, don't think about it. As long as it's the mining machinery Faith, they will definitely covet it. They lost so many soldiers and even their machine magnate was damaged. They must be running low on resources now. If they know that we've discovered a mine, they'll definitely swarm over. After Wind said this, everyone's face suddenly changed. Even Wind stopped smiling and his heart skipped a beat. *CK, please don't let him hit the nail on the head. Otherwise, the Scarlet Dragon Drake wouldn't have been attacked by an ordinary force. Just as everyone was looking at each other, a few wolves in the desert suddenly ran toward the Scarlet Dragon dagger. The patrolling enemies are coming this way. The players kept shouting. They'll be here in a few minutes. The players who were working on the construction at the main entrance looked up from the trenches. The people who were discussing on high ground all looked at Lang Feng. Lang Feng immediately picked up his wolf sniper rifle and shouted, "Everyone, pay attention to your concealment." Right now, there were only about 80 players in the Scarlet Dragon dagger. If they encountered an enemy, they would not have any reinforcements, but the enemy's armed jeeps could arrive in a few minutes. The defensive facilities and campsite of the Scarlet Dragon dagger had not been completed yet. Once they were caught in the battle, it would be difficult to escape, and the subsequent construction work would be difficult to complete. Therefore, Lang Feng chose to hide everyone at the first moment, trying to hide from the patrolling enemies. After everyone heard the order, they all put down their work. The obstacles were all hidden behind the stone spikes, and the newly built tents were all closed. The construction players hid in the trenches, and the players on high ground all buried their heads. Their own wild wolves were also led to places where the enemy could not see. When the players who came back to report saw that everyone was hiding, they quickly returned to the Scarlet Dragon Dagon and hid in the trenches with their mounts. They crawled and tried not to expose themselves. In the distance, the roar of the desert armed jeep's engine was getting closer. Lang Feng used the shadow of the high stone spike and aimed the wolf sniper rifle in the background. He clearly saw the gradually approaching patrol car. Lang Feng reported in a low voice, 3 armed jeeps, a total of 15 people. Chapter 440 Another Epic Pet. The players carefully hid behind cover and did not dare to breathe too loudly, afraid that they would give themselves away. The sound of the armed jeep was getting closer and closer, and the rustling sound of the tires rubbing against the desert gradually disappeared. It was replaced by the cracking sound of rubber crushing the gravel in the gobi. From the sound of the gravel, the 3 cars were getting closer and closer, and finally stopped. Lang Feng retracted his head, not daring to show it. At this distance, he would be exposed if he was not careful. The machinery faith fanatics in the 3 cars glanced at the Scarlet Dragon dagger and felt that something was wrong today. The wind howled, and the dust was lifted up more than 10 meters high and then integrated with the desert. "All right, it's enough to just take a look here. Do you want to go in and take a look? Don't you want to live anymore?" The mercenaries of the wasteland couldn't help but say. The interior of the Scarlet Dragon Drake was like a maze, and he had heard from his brothers at the front line that people would die if they went in. The mechanical zealot was silent for a moment, his eyes looking around. "I just feel that there's something wrong with this place today." "Nonsense, of course it's wrong. So many animals and people have died here, it must be full of vengeful spirits. It would be strange if it wasn't strange. Let's go, I'm already getting goosebumps," the mercenary urged. The others also showed impatience on their faces. Their task was only to patrol. The earlier they patrolled, the earlier they could go back and rest. There was no need to waste time in this god-forsaken place. The mechanical zealot's eyes swept a few more times unwillingly, but he couldn't persuade the others, so he had no choice but to continue patrolling. Wang! The engine of the armed jeep started again, and the exhaust pipe spewed out violently. The sound of crushed stones was heard again, followed by the sound of the jeep moving away. Lang Feng slowly stuck his head out and set up his wolf sniper rifle. Through his high magnification scope, he saw the 3 jeeps leaving. Lang Feng heaved a sigh of relief. He used the scope of the sniper rifle as a telescope and wandered around the Gale Desert, checking the situation within his field of vision. He was ready to give the order to resume production at any time. However, at this moment, Lang Feng's X2 scope suddenly saw a group of players from the north. Their faces were covered in headscarves, and only black sunglasses could be seen on their faces. They formed a long line and rushed towards the Scarlet Dragon Dole. The players and the convoy were only less than 200 meters apart. Because the players were behind a low reverse slope, neither side had met. However, the deafening engine and the sound of the wind quickly reached the players' ears. After a long and travel-worn journey, the players could no longer tell if it was the sound of a jeep or a big truck as they listened to the whistling wind in the desert. Some people even complained, "Traveling dragon is so rich. He actually has the money to buy a truck. This mission is so satisfying. They've arrived so early, so they must have completed a lot of missions. We have to hurry, or we won't even get the soup." The players quickened their pace. From the roar of the engine, they would reach the marked location after going uphill. However, there was a player who had fought against an armed jeep before. When he heard the sound, he felt that something was wrong. He frowned and took out his weapon in advance. Just as everyone was gritting their teeth and preparing to cross the last sand slope, the roar of the engine above their heads became clearer. Before everyone could react, a huge object jumped over their heads in the next second. Its shadow covered the sky, and the chassis of the armed jeep clearly appeared above the players. It wasn't one, but three, one after another. The Desert Coalition Army drove like this every day. They accelerated on the slope, then fell heavily on the sand with the help of gravity. This feeling of blood suddenly boiling made everyone feel like they were alive. But today, they did the same thing. When they flew up, they found that there were many people on the sand slope. They took a closer look and realized that they were the mutants from Shandu. The players who were shrouded in the shadow of the jeep were stunned for a moment. When they saw the black chassis coming at them, they finally reacted and dodged to the sides. Boom! The mechanical zealot's reaction was still fast. It discovered the Sand City Inhumans at the first moment. Before the jeep landed, it had already equipped the modified assault rifle in its hand. As the jeep landed on the ground, the bullets shot out like fire dragons. The players hiding in the Scarlet Dragon dagger all looked at Lang Feng. At this moment, Lang Feng's eyes were focused on the Wolf sniper rifle. The crosshair was aimed at the mechanical zealot that was shooting. The Wolf sniper rifle equipped with a silencer only made a muffled sound. The bullet shot out of the barrel and hit the mechanical zealot's shoulder blade. The modified arm instantly flowed with electricity and was temporarily paralyzed. The gunshots stopped abruptly. Lang Feng's shot was the signal for the players to counterattack. The players who were hiding in the Scarlet Dragon dagger rode on their wolves and swarmed out. The president of the Myth Guild, Lost Mon, took the lead. He had a wild wolf slung over his shoulder. His entire body was covered in silver armor, and he held an alloy spear in his hand. Zhao Zilong, who had entered and left Changban hillside 7 times, charged towards the enemy to slash him. Wind Howl Castle. After 2 long hours of waiting, Link finally welcomed the moment when the mutant snail broke free of the blood cocoon and welcomed its new life. Other than Link, there was also the macaw, the curly-haired baboon, King Kong, the treasure-hunting mouse, and the 5 secret agent mice. Many of his pets surrounded Link, witnessing the birth of another new epic-level member. The macaw was curious as it looked at the pocket-sized blood cocoon in the fish tank and scratched its head. I originally thought that only gargoyles and the touch dragon god would be at the epic stage. I didn't expect such a tiny snail to be at the epic stage. The macaw stuck its wings into its chest and puffed up its cheeks. I'd like to see how powerful an epic snail is. Link crossed his arms and stared at the blood cocoon on the mutant snail. Suddenly, the blood chrysalis loosened a little. The surface of the chrysalis made a crisp sound, and the cracks were clearly visible. Then, the snail's shell under the blood cocoon began to move and spin, twisting the blood cocoon that wrapped around its body and gradually peeling off the shell. The snail stretched out its head and body. When the blood cocoon was completely peeled off from the snail shell, an exquisite outer shell that looked like a mechanical watch was revealed. Inside the translucent snail shell, the gears, pointers, and mechanical structures could be clearly seen. In addition, there were some structures similar to diode and line channels. Link immediately used Detect on the snail that had been reborn. Monster attributes. Name, sound transmission bug. Grade, light purple. Race, mollusk. Attributes, spirit, electronic affinity. Level, 5+, leader. Initial skill 1, electromagnetic pulse level 5, releases electromagnetic pulse, temporarily paralyzing all electronic equipment within a 5-meter radius. Initial skill 2, encrypted communication, a unified encrypted frequency signal device exclusive to the sound bugs to prevent cracking and monitoring. Initial skill 3, mental link, mental type individuals can use sound bugs as a medium for mental communication. Initial skill 4, cochlea mode, the sound transmission bug can be transformed into cochlea mode and worn on the user's ear. Evaluation, the perfect combination of biology, technology, and superpowers. Link took a deep breath after reading the bug's information. Although the sound transmission bug had the least skills among the 3 epic pets, the support-type sound transmission bug had 4 highly unified skills, and almost all of them were related to communication. The macaw tiptoed to the fish tank and stuck its head out to stare at the sound bug. Tisk, that's all there is to it. Other than the fancy snail shell, I don't see any other strengths. How can Yingluo be a grade higher than me? I'm not convinced. The sound transmission bug raised its head to look at the source of the sound. It immediately saw a sharp and thin metal beak opening and closing above its head. Mother of God! The sound transmission bug that had just come out was so scared that it retreated back into its shell. The macaw pouted, disappointed at the sound transmission bug's reaction. Tisk, am I that scary, Yingluo? She said as she walked to the side. Link stepped forward and placed the bug in his palm. Feeling the warmth of Link's palm and the closeness of his blood, the sound bug crawled out of the snail shell again. Its 2 antennae waved up and down in the air, sensing the surroundings. How is it, do you feel much better after evolving? Said Link. Yes. The bug nodded. I can feel that Ying Ying is full of energy. Then I'll take you back to the Gobi Oasis to recruit more mutant snails, said Link, the corners of his mouth curling up. The sound-transmitting bug had been synthesized and was now Link's pet. Coupled with the fact that its strength had far exceeded that of the other mutated snails, it was natural that its words held great weight among the group of mutated snails. The sound transmission bug lifted a part of its soft body as if it was waving its hand. No need. My mental power is strong now. I only need to send them a signal to let them know what's happening. Master, you only need to send someone to pick them up at the location. After the sound-transmitting bug finished speaking, its 2 antennae pointed at the location of the Gobi Oasis outside the window. A faint blue glow appeared on the delicate snail shell, which finally gathered on the antennae and then disappeared. The sound transmission bug let out a breath and said, "All right, I've sent out the signal. All the mutant snails in Oasis have received my signal. There are 364 of them in total. Master, you can arrange for someone to pick them up." Link was amazed at the speed of the sound bugs. They had informed everyone so quickly. Then Link's eyes focused on the macaw. "Jin, you've been to the Gobi Oasis and you know where the mutated snails are. I'll have to trouble you to go there." The macaw raised its wings and saluted, "Yes sir." Looking at the empty-handed macaw, Link quickly reminded, "There are more than 300 mutant snails. You should at least get a container, right?" The macaw could only hear its voice and not see its bird. Its voice echoed in the corridor, "Don't worry, I'll definitely choose the best container." Link loved the sound bugs so much that he couldn't let go. These skills looked very powerful. There was only one sound bug now. Other than the ear-piercing mode, it didn't feel weird when worn. No matter what Link did, the sound bug wouldn't fall out of his ear. It was as if it had become a part of his body. However, other than that, encrypted communication and mental link could not be tested. When the other mutated snails arrived, the most important thing was still to reproduce. With the ability of the sound-transmitting bug, in order to make full use of its advantage, it had to establish a connection with other sound-transmitting bugs, so there was a hard requirement on the number of sound-transmitting bugs. The sound bug felt Link's burning gaze and suddenly had a bad feeling. He felt like he had fallen into a tiger's den. The treasure-hunting mouse climbed onto Link's shoulder and moved from his arm to his palm. It curiously touched the sound-transmitting bug with its little paw and sized it up. Compared to the terrifying macaw, the treasure-hunting mouse was much more adorable and harmless. After that, the sound bug greeted the other pets in a friendly manner. Link also realized that the bug was very clingy to the King Kong. Perhaps it was because the King Kong was a large piece of metal, so the bug treated it as a mobile signal tower, or perhaps it was due to the interaction between metal and electronic affinity. It did not want to get off the King Kong after lying on it. About 10 minutes later, "I'm back" voice came from downstairs. Then, the macaw appeared at the door, carrying a black pot on its back. Link's eyelids twitched. Why did this guy have to put the mutant snails in a big pot? At first glance, it would look like all 300 snails had exploded from the spiciness. Clang! The macaw removed the black pot and opened the lid. The 364 mutated snails finally met the sound transmission bug. After the macaw heard about the sound transmission bug's ability, it immediately felt like it was facing a great enemy. I seem to be wavering on the edge of unemployment again. Previously, the macaw's specialty was translation. It was the communication tool between Link and his pet. However, since Link could now command his pets with his mind and it was said that he had also learned many beast languages, communicating with his pets was no problem. Under the influence of alcohol, the macaw activated its seraphic speed ability in an attempt to use its speed advantage to regain its footing. However, the appearance of the sound transmission bug made the macaw feel a sense of danger. No matter how fast he ran, he couldn't be faster than the sound bugs that used electric waves to instantly send messages. Once the number of sound bugs increased, everyone in the Lin family financial group would wear them. Link could communicate directly with everyone on an encrypted channel. His role as a secretary would be greatly reduced. Inner scroll. It was to inner scroll. The macaw wiped the sweat from its forehead. He counted his current occupations: fat translator, war correspondent, secretary, and fast-moving runner. As the number of pets increased, the power that she could use became less and less. She had to keep working hard to improve herself so that she could maintain her position as Link's favorite. No. It was time to continue working hard. If I don't work hard, I won't be able to keep my position. The macaw secretly made up its mind. Link placed the sound bugs and mutated snails in the castle's greenhouse. It was the most comfortable environment, and they only had one thing to do every day to reproduce. After that, Link heaved a sigh of relief and returned to his office. As soon as he sat down, the phone in the office rang. It was a call from the Military Intelligence Department. "General," Ren Yi reported to Link, "the Red Dragon camp at the front line was discovered by the enemy on the first day of construction. The Inhumans have vowed to resist and stopped 3 waves of the enemy's attack. They are now standing firm.